Happy Monday. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. It's a little different today. Yes, it's Monday, but across from me, yes, I have talented, fabulous producer Carlene Bragg, but I also have a guy who's not unfamiliar to the, I know that was
New to this chair?
New to this chair. He's been around. A big help behind the scenes, but he is producing the show now. James Brierton, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, Nick. Thanks for welcoming me on back here. Good to join you guys.
It's good to have you on. That is James, if you see him right there. Again, it's Monday. Thank you guys for joining us. We have a lot going on, but we want to start with this, because there's a press conference happening live right now. And here's a live look at that press conference. Let me give you some backstory. It's a story that happened over the weekend. So the man accused of killing a lawmaker and her husband and wounding another lawmaker in Minnesota and his wife, they have been arrested. 57-year-old Vance Bolter has been arrested alive in a field near his home in Sibley County, I think I'm saying that right, where the search concentrated Sunday. Officials said no, quote, use of force was used in this arrest. A local police chief there called it the largest manhunt in state history. Again, this is a story that broke over the weekend as far as those two lawmakers and their spouses being shot, one couple dying in that shooting. We heard from the U.S. Attorney's Office this morning. Here are federal prosecutors here. I'm sorry, is this the U.S. Attorney's, guys? Or is this the FBI?
Yeah, so the news conference is billed as federal officials making a statement, but we can also see in this feed, Nick, local and state officials are joining them.
Okay. And so we had another press conference earlier this morning. Mm-hmm. Here's the one with federal officials. Let's take a listen in. This is our content partner there in Minnesota, Care 11. Let's listen in to what's happening right now.
Out of
planning and surveillance went on.
There were some abortion rights supporters, I believe, on the list, but again, there was dozens and dozens and dozens of names on, hundreds of pages of documents that were recovered with his writings on them.
Did he confess and give more details after he was apprehended last night?
I'm not going to comment on that at this time.
Can you talk about how long this creep planning and surveillance went on? Do you have any idea?
It appears to have gone on for an extensive period of time. I think it's unclear. The writings appear to have been done at various times over the course of at least months, I would say. But beyond that, it's speculative.
Did he give any? Did he have?
There's kind of two questions that go towards the same thing. He appeared to be involved with some kind of a home security or professional security operation. I wonder if you have any details into that. And was he familiar to law enforcement, even though he didn't appear to have any kind of serious criminal record in the state?
I've seen the press reporting on his security company. I don't know anything beyond that or any involvement that would have in this case. And I have no knowledge of his interactions with law enforcement prior to this.
Can you comment at all about, his card, the light pack, the license plate, maybe a bit of a badge sniffer? Was he obsessed with police?
I have no idea. I think I skipped over the slide. The police license plate wasn't an official-looking police license plate, as you can tell. It said, I believe it was like a reflective black things that you would buy to put on like a mailbox, like your address on a mailbox.
Was he a bit obsessed with do we know?
I have no idea.
There have been reports that his wife was, quote, detained at a rest stop in Onamia, and that in her car was found weapons, passports, and a lot of cash. She was also with 3 children. Is that true? And is the wife being investigated?
Go ahead. I'll defer to law enforcement on that one.
Yeah, I can answer the question. So when, the question was detained, obviously, when an individual commits these, heinous acts, and we knew he was the suspect in this case, we're going to want to talk to the family. At this point in time, this is, under active prosecution, and so we want to be careful about what we say. She was cooperative with us at that time. There were a firearm in the vehicle at the time, had valid reasons for her she was legally in possession, I should say that, at this time, and there were other items that were recovered, but we're going to leave that to some of the prosecution as we work this out. So we're not going to comment on all of it, as this is still continue to be part of the active investigation. We need to figure out exactly what all of this means in relation to this.
To be clear, there's not going to be a first appearance in district court then today, and then where is he being held?
There'll be an initial appearance in federal court over in St. Paul, Minnesota at 1:30 Central Time this afternoon. I do not anticipate there will be an appearance in state court today.
Just one more question on the hit list that
You said 45 names, and we've seen more than that. Was there more than 45?
There's lots of, I mean, go.
Yeah, and I think it can help. I mean, just there's a lot of names that we're working together right now. So the FBI, there are some, and we've mentioned this, that there are some other names that are from out of state. They have been working through through our Fusion Center network across the United States, and then our partners at the FBI are helping coordinate with that in that process. The question is a good one. Part of what we're looking through, the names, the numbers that you're referencing, was names in multiple notebooks. Some of them are redundant. So I don't have a total number of people that were in there because some of them are overlapping on multiple lists. And again, I do want to continue to clarify, this is not a list of people that was in a numerical order and some sort of ranking. These are names that are being developed as we are looking at this across multiple writings in terms of that, just to be clear about it.
And was Senator Hoffman's name even
In there, though?
I believe it was.
Okay. Where is he being held?
Right now, I think he's in the custody of the United States Marshal Service over at the St. Paul Federal Courthouse. Beyond that, I'll defer to the marshals on where he'll be held, assuming he's held in custody pending trial.
Can today's court appearance be considered an arraignment? Is there anything you can tell us about what's supposed to happen today?
It'll be an initial appearance because he's only charged by complaint. He has not yet been indicted. So he'll have an initial appearance, as all defendants do, before a federal judge, where he'll be asked to identify himself. The court will appoint a lawyer to represent him, or he can retain one and have a lawyer represent him. And then the court will ask whether or not we will move to seek his detention pending trial, which we obviously will. And then the court could set a detention hearing and a preliminary hearing to assess whether or not there's probable cause to charge him by complaint. How much of that will happen actually today is unclear. We'll see at 1:30.
It's at the Warren E. Burger Federal Building, and that's the only court appearance today.
Correct.
Thank you.
And for Superintendent Evans, yesterday, the way that things played out yesterday, when you came up for the 5:30 or so press conference, did you know that he was close to being caught at that point? Or did it come as a
surprise when you got the trail cam information or from a neighbor who saw him in the field?
So that, we, as noted, we still had belief that he was in Sibley County. When we held that, we did not know the information specifically that he was there. Based on the overall investigative, that was still our belief there, but the specific information that led to his arrest at that time, we were not tracking yet. So, I mean, and I assume that's related to the timeline. These teams and the law enforcement teams acted very quickly when they had a specific lead that led us to know he was in that area. And so it was a relatively short period of time where they converged and were able to do that.
What we knew before this news conference was bad enough.
You have told us is even worse. Where does this rank in terms of attacks that you know of across the United States? And what you addressed some of your reaction, but can you all three give us your reaction?
Look, I mean, this was a political assassination, which is not a word we use very often in the United States, let alone here in Minnesota. It's a chilling attack on our democracy, on our way of life. It's only the most recent example of violent political extremism in this country, and that's a trend that's been increasing in recent years, and that's unfortunate. And I hope it's a wake-up call to everyone that people can disagree with you without being evil or needing to be killed or hurt.
You mentioned that multiple different aspects of this investigation were found in multiple different notebooks. How many were discovered, and were they all in his vehicle?
My understanding is some notebooks were recovered from his vehicle and others from his house, although obviously there was law enforcement literally from all around the state. I couldn't begin to identify all of them. Representatives of many of those, or some of those agencies are here, but far more were involved. And so all I can say, there was many notebooks recovered from multiple locations. And part of it's
makes sense about him going back home. Like, what was he thinking? Did he say he was trying to get back to his house? I mean, it's odd, I guess you could say.
I can't speculate as to what was in his mind. He obviously went on a murderous rampage on Friday, so I think I'm not aligned with his thought process.
Mr. Winston, can you talk about, is there any sort of attention being paid to what kind of safety needs to be given
To politicians at this time, or is this a space where people feel like any threat has left with this president?
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to, of course, take these threats as serious as possible and throw all available resources towards these threats. We are in lockstep with the Capitol Police on a regular basis, and we're continuing to have those conversations about threats towards politicians. Thank you for that question.
Maybe one more question here before we wrap up.
Perhaps this is for Chief Broley. Just wanted to wrap it back to, hoping you can speak to just how pivotal it is that your officers acted proactively, stopping by the Hortman's house and likely stopping more victims.
Yeah, great question, just for everybody in the room. Question is, how important was it that the police officer stopped at Representative Hortman's house, which really foiled this entire plan? It's incredibly important. That started with a sergeant who was actually off duty, was walking out of the building and had heard that there was a shooting in another community at Senator Hoffman's house. Being alert, seen two officers in the police department, said, hey, drive by Melissa Hortman's house and just check on the house, would you? And that's essentially what they pulled up and found, that in the drive was the car, and essentially the criminal act was occurring as they pulled up. Had they not foiled the plan, essentially took his vehicle away from him, which involved all his maps, all his names, all his weaponry, I would be very scared what it would look like over the next few hours had we not done that.
And just to clarify, did your sergeant know about the New Hope and Maple Grove incidents, or just the one in Champlin?
He only knew about the one that occurred in Champlin.
So the other officer that came upon him at the second house and saw him sitting in a vehicle, did she realize, did she report that and did they try to chase him? Did she realize that was suspect, or?
I don't think she did. She knew something was awry, and then he left and proceeded to Brooklyn Park and carried out the next shooting. So got lost in the chaos of the event, not lost in the chaos of the events, but there was a new shooting shortly thereafter. It really is remarkable, to the question earlier, how he went to 4 houses that night, and in 3 of them, or 2 of them, he encountered law enforcement at the 3rd and 4th one, and the second one, no one was home at all. It's remarkable how diligent law enforcement was at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and 3:30 in the morning on a Friday night, that they were responding to just to do wellness checks on our politicians. It's a testament. The last 48 hours have been an incredible testament to the professionalism and dedication and commitment of our federal, state, and local law enforcement. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, I'm going to be back in about 3 minutes with some materials, but I need 3 minutes.
Thank you so much.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. That was a press conference regarding federal charges against, I had his name right there, Vance Bolter. That's the man accused of killing a Minnesota lawmaker and wounding another, and went to their homes of 2 other lawmakers to carry out more carnage on the night of the shooting. That's according to federal prosecutors, and I'm reading this from AP News. We did learn that Bolter, who is 57 years old, is charged with federal murder, stalking offenses. He already faces state charges, including murder and attempted murder. We've been getting updates on this pretty frequently as far as this case. Again, a big story from over the weekend. So as soon as we get more information, and I'm sure there will be more updates and additional updates, we will be sure to pass that along to you. So yeah, that, again, a big story there out of Minnesota. All right, so let's shift gears for a second. Let's totally reset. Let's come back home to Charlotte, because it is quite warm outside.
It's warm.
It's pretty warm outside.
Icks
for this week. What's today? I know today is Monday, y'all, but is it a Nick Pick or a Nick Ick? I'm gonna have to go with a Nick Ick, because it is icky outside. Meteorologist Becca Birdsall is here in studio. What's the deal, Becca?
Listen, our forecasted high is 89 degrees. This is actually the coolest day out of the next 7. The heat will only continue to build. So if today's an egg, I don't know what tomorrow or the next day will be. We need another name.
We need a supreme egg.
Icky. Icky. Oh, so and we are expecting some storms possibly.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, all of that humidity level, basically why it's going to be feeling so uncomfortably hot. That's also going to help spawn a couple of thunderstorms later on this afternoon and evening. Something that we've actually already been seeing across portions of the high country. But in the metro, we've got a mix of sunshine and clouds, and of course, temperatures responding to that sunshine up to around 84 in Charlotte, also 84 in Monroe. But pay attention to Chirac. Already reached 90 degrees, but when you factor in that humidity, feels like 98. Feels like 90 in Charlotte, 94 over in Rockingham, and feeling like a 91 over in Statesville. The only sweet spot over there is up towards the high country, as that hourly heat index showing most of that feels like temperatures will be in the middle to upper 90s for much of the afternoon today. Now, here's going to be the weather headlines pretty much going forward from now all the way through about Thursday. There's going to be the potential for some scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Not everyone's going to be seeing them, but those that do, especially with those slow moving downpours, will have the potential for some isolated flash flooding just with how saturated the soils have been from the previous week. We'll also see those heat index value be above 95 pretty much this entire week. Now let's talk about the heat first, as high temperatures today are only going to be a few degrees above the normal high for this time of year. Normal high is 87 and will likely do just about the upper 80s to lower 90s, but when you factor in the dew point in the 70s, that's basically tropical air. That's what's going to make it feel so much hotter. That peak heat index today will likely be at 97, peaking tomorrow 99, feeling more like the triple digits though both Wednesday and Thursday, so this will easily be the hottest day of the year so far. In addition with that, June is actually the month where the sun angle is the strongest, and it actually peaks this upcoming Friday at the summer solstice. So on par with that, UV index forecast should be no surprise. It's at a 10, very high. It's a burn time of about 15 minutes, so sunscreen, hat, sunglasses, definitely some water, definitely going to be needed later on today. Why we're so hot is this Bermuda high pressure system sitting off the Carolina coast, and this is basically infecting all of the warm, hot tropical air across the southeast and Carolinas. Very typical for this time of year, and probably something that you will see us talk about pretty frequently. Doppler radar right now showing a couple thunderstorms have really started to pop up, especially in places like Ashe, Watauga, and Avery counties, and you can see some pockets of pretty heavy rainfall with the system as well as we zoom in on that. So not going to be completely widespread, but this will only continue to develop further, especially later on in the metro in the next couple of hours. We actually just had a downpour over towards Blowing Rock, maybe a little bit of light rain currently falling out there, but still beautiful views, and we'll likely see some sunshine break out there over the next hour. Futurecast showing showers and thunderstorms developing, not in everyone's backyard, but for today, scattered activity is what we can expect. Again, those slow moving downpours and some lightning probably going to be our biggest concerns. We'll do it all again for Tuesday as well. We are under a low to medium excessive rainfall risk, basically for the areas especially that saw more of that significant rainfall from the past 48 hours. We'll likely see a better chance for the potential of flash flooding. Again, not going to be widespread, but a couple of counties have been added to a flood watch. This is mainly for mountain counties and for our most eastern counties until about midnight. Charlotte has not been included by this. These are all issued by different National Weather Service offices, so Greenville, Spartanburg has a different flood watch criteria than some of the other ones. Does not mean that the Charlotte area will be completely spared for flooding, just means that if any flooding does occur, it will be isolated. If you've been wondering why your grass is so green, well, it's been a wet June so far. So far this month, we've picked up over 3 inches of rainfall, and this is being reported at the Charlotte Douglas Airport with a departure from normal above an inch, and our drought monitor has been basically eliminated this past month from it. So we will be set up pretty nice as we head into these summer months. Of course, summer officially begins on Friday at 10:41 p.m. and we are forecasting a high temperature of about 90, so very on par with the average for this time of year. Want to get to a couple of things. You'll notice we'll start to enter into the actual high temperatures into the 90s by the time we get into tomorrow. So we're forecasting really our first heat wave of this summer, where we see at least 3 consecutive days with 90-degree days or above. And we are forecasting that not only for the next 3 days, but likely for the next week ahead. Next cold front will likely come through between Thursday night into early Friday. That could bring us some briefly drier air for Friday, but that is going to not last long, as we will only continue to see heat build up for next weekend, looking at a high temperature of 95 by the time we reach Sunday.
Ooh, 95?
95,
Wow.
not a misprint.
It's like summer is going to be here officially Friday, and it's like wasting no time at all.
Slap you in the face.
Oh, man. Oh,
Find a way to cool off for sure.
I need to get one of those fans off the TikTok shop that I saw.
I have 2.
From the TikTok
And
shop?
It's amazing. I do not shop from TikTok shop.
Okay.
I draw my line there.
Okay, thank you, James.
But
This is
Amazon,
nice
Amazon
fan.
has some really good ones.
I got a fan thanks to James.
Yeah.
So, we'll figure it out come summer months. Well, thank you, Becca.
Of course, good to be here.
Becca was on the morning show, so she I don't know how she's feeling right now. I'm sure she's on autopilot, and we're gonna let her leave.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, Becca. Thank you for your time. 95 degrees. Wow. Okay. Well, I'll get over it. So that was Becca with the forecast. We'll check back in with more weather throughout the afternoon. But first, we want to get back to this continuing coverage from our content partners over there in Care 11 in Minnesota. And so, I'm sorry about that, James. I punched that up. Okay, a press conference just wrapped up. Is this still the same press conference, James?
This is the reporter going through the new documentation that's been available, some new details as he's describing, if we want to listen into that.
Okay, let's listen into this.
And a Buick from a person after at some point here in order to facilitate his escape. It looks like he withdrew more than $2,000 from a U.S. bank branch in Robbinsdale after the shooting. Okay, he met a man at a bus stop in North Minneapolis that he had no prior connection to. Belter had 2 duffel bags with him, and he asked to purchase an e-bike from the witness. They traveled to the witness's house, and Belter agreed to purchase his Buick sedan as well. So he bought that getaway car and an e-bike from just a random person that he met at a bus stop, according to this criminal complaint. Here's a map showing, this aligns with the video footage that we showed throughout the day yesterday when the Buick was found on the side of the road in Sibley County on Highway 25, about 5 miles away from his home in Green Isle. It says that as they searched the vehicle, among other things, they found the cowboy hat, which of course we showed was in front of the vehicle, as well as a handwritten letter directed to the FBI. In that letter, he claimed his name was Dr. Vance Luther Belter. He admitted to being the shooter at large in Minnesota involving the 2 shootings that morning. So he apparently left a note in the vehicle confessing to the crimes. And then it goes on to say at about 9:10 last night, they located him in a field close by and took him into custody. So just going through this very quickly, a document that I haven't read yet, along with information from the press conference. There are a lot more details that we're going to sift through and be able to report today. Chilling details, a political assassination that is now being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'll send it back to you.
No, it's on.
All right, you're watching live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. This is live coverage from our content partners over there with Care 11 in Minnesota. So that was a reporter giving us sort of a recap of what happened during those that press conference for federal officials, also state and local law enforcement. Again, just want to recap. This is a big story from over the weekend. The man accused of killing a Minnesota lawmaker and wounding another went to the homes of 2 other lawmakers to carry out more carnage on the night of the shootings. That's what we learned from federal prosecutors. 57-year-old Vance Belter is charged with federal murder and stalking offenses. He's already facing state charges, including murder and attempted murder. Again, as the story continues to evolve and we learn more details, we'll bring this to you here on Live Impact News here on WCNC Plus. We want to move over to another big story that's happening right now. This is a live look from the G7 summit there in Canada. So earlier today, President Trump, who is attending this summit there in Alberta, Canada, got a chance to meet with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. They talked about a number of things in this briefing that they had. So in case you missed it, we want to go back and let you listen in. And that's Mark Carney right there on your far right of this live shot. But we want to go back to that Q&A with President Trump and Mark Carney, Canadian Prime Minister, from earlier today. Let's take a listen in.
Mr. President, welcome to Canada. Thank you. It's a great honor. Happy birthday. A few days short. A little bit. A few days short, but didn't have a chance to see you on the day. Happy birthday to the U.S. military as well, 250th, and this is the 50th birthday, if you will, of the G7. This marks the 50th birthday of the G7. And the G7 is nothing without U.S. leadership, and your personal leadership of the United States, many issues, geopolitics, economic, technology, and working hand in hand with the United States, Canada and the United States, and the other G7 partners with your leadership. I'm very much looking forward to the meeting. I'm grateful to have you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it, and we've developed a very good relationship, and we're going to be talking about trade and many other things. And we have a whole group of people, some traders and some other people. I see my top talented group of people, and you do too, and I know they work together very well. I look forward to that. The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in, and I would say that that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in, and you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago. But it didn't work out that way. But it used to be the G8. And now it's, I guess, what's that, 8 years ago, it switched over. They threw Russia out, which I claimed was a very big mistake. Even though I wasn't in politics then, I was very loud about it. It was a mistake in that you spend so much time talking about Russia, and he's no longer at the table. So it makes life more complicated. But you wouldn't have had the war. Other than that, I think we're going to accomplish a lot. And I expect to. And I think our primary focus will be trade, and trade with Canada, and I'm sure we can work something out.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so much. Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
Say it.
what is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
It's not so much holding up. I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something, hopefully.
Mr. President, do you think a deal is achievable within days, within weeks? Is there that kind of runway?
Yeah, it's achievable. Both parties have to agree. Yeah, sure.
Mr. President, have you heard any signals or seen any messages from intermediaries that Iran wishes to de-escalate the conflict?
Yeah.
What have you heard? What have you heard from the Iranians?
They'd like to talk, but they should have done that before. I had 60 days, and they had 60 days, and on the 61st day, I said, we don't have a deal. They have to make a deal, and it's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war, and they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
And what would you say, in your opinion, what would it take for the U.S. to get involved in this conflict militarily?
I don't want to talk about that.
And you mentioned Putin. Do you think that he should have a seat at the G7 today, that it should be the G8?
I'm not saying he should at this point, because too much water's gone over the dam, maybe. But it was a big mistake. Obama didn't want him, and the head of your country, the proud head of your country, didn't want him. This was a big mistake. you wouldn't have that war. You know, you have your enemy at the table. Even I don't even consider him. He wasn't really an enemy at that time. There was no concept. If I were president, this war would have never happened. But likewise, if he were a member of what was called the G8 at that time, it was always the G8, you wouldn't have a war right now.
What Israel support and what intelligence support are you providing Israel?
We've always supported Israel. We have for a long period of time, strongly. And Israel's doing very well right now.
Why not have China at the G8? Why not have China here, the
biggest economy in the world after the United States? Well, it's not a bad idea. I don't mind that. If somebody wants to suggest China coming in, I think we suggest. But you want to have people that you can talk to. You know, they don't talk. Putin speaks to me. He doesn't speak to anybody else. He doesn't want to talk because he was very insulted when he got thrown out of the G8. As I would be, as you would be, as anybody would be. He was very insulted. And, I mean, he was thrown out by Trudeau, who convinced one or two people, along with Obama. He was thrown out, and he's not a happy person about it, I can tell you that. He basically doesn't even speak to the people that throw him out, and I agree with him.
Go ahead.
Well, on immigration, why are you ordering ICE to target Democratic inner cities? What's behind that?
I don't know what you're saying.
You did a post last night where you said you want ICE to really target Democratic.
Yeah, I want them to focus on the cities because the cities are where you really have what's called sanctuary cities, and that's where the people are. I look at New York, I look at Chicago. I mean, you got a really bad governor in Chicago and a bad mayor, but the governor's probably the worst in the country, Pritzker. But I look at how that city has been overrun by criminals, and you know, New York and L.A. Look at L.A. L.A. Those people weren't from L.A. They weren't from California. Most of those people, many of those people, and yeah, that's a focus. Biden allowed 21 million people to come into our country. Of that, vast numbers of those people were murderers, killers, people from gangs, people from jails. They emptied their jails out into the U.S. Most of those people are in the cities, all blue cities, all Democrat-run cities, and they think they're going to use them to vote. It's not going to happen.
And that was President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. You actually saw them live in one of our boxes there because, again, the G7 summit is happening right now, underway in Alberta, Canada. Again, President Trump answered questions from reporters along with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney earlier today. And I think is this them right here? Okay. Here's a live look of President Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the G7 summit. We've seen them in various locations moving around, again, answering questions from reporters earlier today as the summit kicks off and is underway. President Trump responding throughout the day to what's going on when it comes to Iran, also trade deals. He commented on the protests across the country. But again, that is a live look at the G7 summit. And I believe this is France's President Emmanuel Macron, right?
I believe that's correct.
Right beside Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Again, you see it there. We will get back to that in just a moment. Again, that is underway. So much is happening regarding the G7 summit. A lot of discussions being had here at the G7 summit. So we will keep an eye on that. We want to go to some live coverage. Is this live?
Our content partners in Minneapolis are continuing to cover this weekend shooting, and they're in their midday newscast. I thought maybe we'll just take a quick listen in, Nick.
Yeah, let's take a listen in.
Dealt with before the state charges. That's according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Cece.
All right, thanks, Ian. Those new details chilling and heartbreaking. Well, for the first time this afternoon, we're also hearing from the woman who says she saw Belter in her neighbor's fields and alerted authorities. In the last 2 hours, she talked with NBC News.
And I watched him walk, and I drove right by him, but and he came to the culvert. I know there's a culvert down here, and then he ducked down, and I was shaking, freaking out.
You saw him duck down?
I did, yeah. And then they were clearing out to open up the roads. So one vehicle had gone by, and when I got to the end of the road, or the end of the driveway, there was another one coming down the road. And so I waved my arms and I flagged him, and he's like, "Is everything okay?" And at this point I'm shaking. And I said, "No, there's a person. I saw a person. He looked like SWAT team. He was in black."
Wow, that over 40-hour manhunt now over. We'll have an extended version of that interview in our next half hour. As Minnesotans remember Speaker Hortman at the state capitol, we're getting new reaction from the Hoffman family after the arrest of Belter. They wrote, quote, "John and I hold a deep and profound gratitude for the work of our law enforcement agencies and the public for their help."
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. This is live coverage from our content partners there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, KARE 11. They were going more in depth on the shooting from over the weekend involving two Minnesota state lawmakers there. So we're going to shift away from that. And we want to go back to the G7 summit. This is Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. He is speaking right now. Let's take a listen in.
Got together in the face of global economic and financial crisis. The end of the international monetary system is known. Stagflation threatening, challenges in the Middle East, geopolitical challenges in the Middle East. And it was the frank, informal discussions around that table in Rambouillet that led to a long period of decisions and prosperity at that time. Alors, nous avons la chance d'avoir le doyen du G7 avec Monsieur le Président maintenant. And then following the fall of the Berlin Wall, the G7 gathered to integrate those countries that had been behind the Iron Curtain of communism and to accelerate the flow of capital and trade to the developing world. 23 years ago, the G7 met here in Kananaskis. We were just talking about it. And that was when the world was still reeling from the aftershocks of 9/11, another turning point in history. And amongst the many decisions taken were control of the spread of weapons of mass destruction, a subject that we'll be coming back to. So as I said, we're meeting at one of those hinge moments, those turning points in history. The world's more divided and dangerous. Hostile states and terrorists have expanded their capabilities and their reach, threatening global security in our local communities. Global commerce, energy systems, even intelligence are all being rewired. En tant que membre du G7, nous avons la possibilité de façonner le monde de demain. Le monde plus sûr, plus prospère, plus juste et plus libre. Mais le G7 doit s'adapter pour arriver à ses fins. Nostalgia isn't a strategy. We have to change with the times and to build a better world. And some of you, such as you, Mr. President, have anticipated these massive changes and are taking bold measures to address them. All of us around this table are reinforcing our militaries and security services for the new world. But we all know that there can be no security without economic prosperity, and no prosperity without resilience. And in a world where shocks flow across the borders, that resilience comes from cooperation around that starts around this table. Cooperation that can lead to a new era of prosperity, energy security and critical minerals, artificial intelligence, quantum, combating human smuggling, and transnational repression. So we will have open, frank discussions over the course of the next 2 days. We might not agree on absolutely every issue, but where we will cooperate, we will make an enormous difference for our citizens and for the world, and bring the next era of prosperity, I hope, to the benefit of those we serve. Avec tout cela, merci beaucoup aux membres de media. Thank you, colleagues. We have some work to do, which will begin in a moment. Thank you very much. I think, Mr. President, I think you've answered a lot of questions already. Thank you.
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. You just finished hearing from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney there at the G7 Summit. That is a beauty shot there in Alberta, Canada. That summit is underway. Leaders from around the world are there, including President Donald Trump. Again, they just wrapped up there for that session as soon as they pop back on. And this is happening throughout the evening, the G7 Summit.
Lots of G7 Summit today here on Live Impact News.
A lot. So we'll get back to that in just a moment or when we can. And we want to get to now, we want to come back home. So the Levine Museum of the New South is celebrating 2025 Civic Season. So basically, Civic Season 2025 runs from Juneteenth to July 4th, aiming to encourage dialogue and civic engagement among young people. And our very own, my partner in crime on the floor, Jay Monreal, got to speak with one of the organizers of it. Let's take a listen in from their interview from this morning, in case you missed it. Let's take a listen in.
In the meantime, at this morning, we want to talk about a unique national initiative. It's called Civic Season 2025.
By God's grace.
This movement running from Juneteenth to July 4th. It's going to aim to encourage dialogue, really, and civic engagement, particularly among young Americans. In Charlotte, there are several free community events that you can participate in to talk about our nation's past, present, and future. And joining us right now is the Chief Education and Strategic Partnership Officer at the Levine Museum of the New South, Val Brown, to bring us all of what we need to know. Val, thanks for joining us here in the Live Impact studio this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's get started with what the civic season is. How did this come about?
Well, I'm sure you can remember your last formal civics class was probably in middle school, but as a 13 and 14-year-old, you're expected to carry that out for the rest of your life, right? Mm-hmm. And so civic season, inspired by the work of Made by Us, a national organization in partnership with cultural institutions like the Levine Museum of the New South, have said we want to focus on this moment in time to capture not only young people, but all people around these ideas about what it means to be engaged in your community.
That's fantastic. What role did young people play then in developing this concept?
Oh, they were the masterminds behind this work. They recognized that there was a moment that they could really engage not only other young people, but adults as well. And I say adults, so we're talking about adults of all ages, where they could really engage them in conversations that are meaningful to them in this moment where we have Juneteenth as one end and July 4th, where people are already thinking about many of these ideas.
So let's talk about some of the specific events locally from the Levine Museum of the New South. You guys did wrap up your Juneteenth Festival of the Carolinas this past weekend. How did that go?
Yes, so we joined the Juneteenth Festival of the Carolinas, who has been a part of the community for more than 2 decades. And so we were there at that event. It was wonderful to get in touch with people who were there. One really important message that I heard on Sunday, yesterday, was that we have to resist the Great Divide. And I think that's really what this is about. How do we bring communities together to talk about things that improve our local community and our state?
And what came out of that conversation?
Yeah, so a lot of people were excited about just even being a part of the community, right? And so getting to know one another, what opportunities there are to get engaged. And a lot of people were like, hey, we would love to hear about what the museum is doing and how we can continue this conversation.
That's fantastic. You have a slice of history coming up this week. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm super excited about that, and also my teenage kids are also super excited about this. But at 7th Street Market, our good friends at 7th Street Market invited us in, and we're going to have free pizza and trivia around local. I know, you get that slice.
Say no
right?
more.
And trivia around local Charlotte history. And again, it's an opportunity to engage in the community and learn a little bit. We recognize that there are so many people moving to Charlotte every day, and so it's good to know the community in which you reside.
All right, so we're looking at the website here, Slice of History, that is coming up tomorrow.
That's right.
At 11:30, so perfect for your lunch hour.
That's right.
You do have to register?
Yes, register, but that's just so we know how many people are coming.
Okay.
We would love to be flooded. and it's first come, first served with the pizza.
Okay, all right, yes, good to know. All right, so be there, be first, get your pizza on. And then the Democracy Happy Hour. This sounds intriguing as well, Val.
I am so excited about Democracy Happy Hour. One of my love languages is nuanced conversations, and this is an opportunity to engage in that way. And so we have special coasters designed in partnership with Educating for American Democracy, where they have questions that we are really going to generate conversation with our community members. I don't want to give you too much because I want people to come in, but I will say that we practice these conversations as a family, and with just 2 questions, we ended up talking for 40 minutes over dinner, and that's with a 15 and 17-year-old. And so I think that really shows how powerful these conversations are and how much they're needed.
For someone who might be hesitant to get involved in conversations like this or participate in events or civic events like this, what do you say to encourage them?
Oh, okay. So first of all, this is entry for everyone. And so this is an invite only. This is a place where we recognize people have different levels of comfort in engaging these conversations. And I said I wasn't going to give you too much, but I'm going to give you one question that we're asking there. But why does civic engagement matter in a healthy democracy? And again, this is a low entry point for anyone to really grapple with what they're thinking about, because too often we don't have these conversations in community with others. And I think it's really important to do that so that we surface some of these things that we believe and we recognize that we are probably more alike than different in many ways.
Good point, Val. As we approach the nation's 250th birthday anniversary, what do you hope Charlotte area residents to take away from participating in civic season?
Oh, so this is our first year engaging in civic season, and I am very excited about the future. I recognize this as a true initiative to bring communities together. So my one wish for the 250th is that this initiative grows, that many people recognize there's an opportunity to stay civically involved, and that you can do that in ways that are local, right there in your neighborhoods, all the way up to wherever your dreams take you. We also have the opportunity as part of a national effort to engage with the 250th Wish Wall. So this is a digital wish wall where we have had folks populating for the last month, just around the country, their wishes for the next 250 years for this country. And so what you will see when you log on to make your wish is a lot of inspiring and positive things about the places we can go that benefit all.
Fantastic. Val Brown from the Levine Museum of the New South, helping foster democratic participation during this civic season and really showing us the role of what museums, our local museums, play in how we think and we can discuss and foster activity and civic participation. Val, anything else we want to know?
I just want to thank you all for having us, and please come on out early and often to all of our events.
Sounds good. We'll put up the website as well on WCNC.com if you want to get involved. And we have a happy hour coming up.
That's right.
And food, a slice of history, tomorrow at the market at 7. Thanks, Val.
Thank you.
And that was the interview from this morning about a new sort of exhibit venture there with the Levine Museum of the New South. You can check out the interview now on our website, WCNC.com. All right, so let's get to some breaking news. This is a breaking news story on Tanglebrook Lane. This is a live shot of the scene. You see CMPD there. We have been able to confirm with Medic that one person was shot. I'm reading this in real time, you guys, so just bear with me. I want to make sure I'm getting you the correct information, one, and two, the information that is confirmed that I can go with. But we do know one person has been shot, treated for life-threatening injuries, and taken to a nearby hospital. So that is what we know at the time. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong, if we know any more. Is that it? That's it.
That's what we got for now.
Okay, one person shot with life-threatening injuries. Again, this is on Tanglebrook Lane there in North Charlotte. Okay, this is a North Charlotte area. And you can see police there. You can see that crime scene taped off. We do have a photographer there. Obviously, you see it right there. But we also have a reporter there on the way there to follow up on this situation. Again, we have very limited information.
Sort of near Betty's Ford.
Betty's Ford. Okay, this is near Betty's Ford. That is, if you hear in the distance, that's Carlene Bragg giving me some updates on this. So here's what we know. One person shot, life-threatening injuries. CMPD there on the scene. This is in the North Charlotte area by Beatty's Ford area. Tanglebrook Lane is the exact street. You see officers there investigating. Things are taped off. As soon as we get more information, you guys, we will make sure to update you here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, we want to shift over to another big story that is dominating national headlines, and this is the conflict between Israel and Iran. I'm reading the latest information from AP News. So the headline reads, Israeli military warns residents in parts of Iran's capital to evacuate. And according to AP News, the Israeli military has warned residents in part of Iran's capital to evacuate ahead of Israeli strikes. And this comes amid escalating tit-for-tat attacks between Israel and Iran that is honestly raised fears for a wider, more dangerous regional war there. Israel launched the attacks on Iran amid simmering tensions over Tehran's nuclear program. So again, that is the situation there. This is a live look over Tel Aviv. Am I missing anything, James? Again, this is a story that we saw the shot up. We wanted to give you some of the latest on this.
I don't think you're missing anything, Nick. I'm thinking about what I heard NBC News reporting this weekend and what the impacts are for people who live in Tel Aviv or in other areas and how the emergency warning system works. And my understanding is, much like we get severe weather alerts to our phones, they now will get about a 30-minute heads up when possible missiles are inbound, followed by 2 or 3 additional warnings, which kind of count them down to when they need to get to whatever their safe shelter place is. So we'll continue to watch this live shot. If this is, to say, the first warning, then this might be the early heads-up notification that the military is tracking something. And so live shots like this right here on Live Impact News will help us know exactly what's happening on the ground over the course of the next few minutes.
Scary situation for folks there. I actually, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, I went to college with this young lady, but she's there in Tel Aviv and was hunkered down all weekend. And she showed some pictures from where she is or was, and pretty much what boiled down to it, she was terrified. So scary situation there. This is a sort of an escalating situation between Iran and Israel. It was Friday when we first broke in with coverage as it continued to escalate between the two countries. But again, as soon as we get more information there, we will be sure to update you there. A big deal, a lot of eyes there on the situation in that global conflict in that region. All right, so let's shift away from that. And man, this is sounds like I got a little happy fingers there. That's my fault. So let's shift away from that. And we want to get to an anniversary that is happening tomorrow. So Emmanuel 9, the Charleston church shooting, 10 years ago. It's hard to believe, one, that's been 10 years ago, and then two, it's a situation, Carlene being from the Charleston area. I got family there. It's kind of a second home for me. I mean, it's one of those, if you remember from that situation that had happened, it came down that night.
You remember where you were.
Yeah, you remember where you were. And you hear about those parishioners, those church members there at Mother Emanuel that were shot during the Bible study by a self-proclaimed white supremacist. And your heart breaks. There was a lot of things that followed after. There's a state senator that was killed in that shooting, Clementa Pinckney. The Confederate flag over the capital of South Carolina came down. Shortly after.
Yeah, weeks later.
So a lot of things that happened following that shooting had a major impact, continues to have a major impact. If you go to downtown Charleston, you'll see that there's still a memorial of sorts for for those victims.
It's a beautiful church.
Beautiful church.
Yeah.
It's right there in
the heart of downtown.
Heart of downtown, Charles. And Carlene, you were there because you shared this before. You were working there as a producer.
Yeah, I just started not too long. That was my first big news day.
What was going through your mind? You were a morning producer at the time, and this broke that night.
Dayside.
You were dayside. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
I was dayside. And it happened the night before, and we all watched TV throughout the night, and we all went to work. Me and my fellow producers went to work early that next day, and it was just, go, go, go. That's what our business is. It's just go, 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 go. And I remember getting home that night after a 12-hour, 13-hour day, and kind of breaking down. The weight of what had happened hit me. And I kind of broke down and cried because this is my home. And I remember thinking to myself, things like this don't happen here.
Yeah.
And,
And it happened.
And it happened.
That forever changed, I would say, the city. It changed the nation.
We grew stronger from the tragedy. It was people held hands on the bridge, and everybody was just kind of gave each other grace.
I remember
and it
that,
was, I mean, I went to Mother Emanuel a couple days afterward and put flowers down, and it was quiet. It was so quiet. This is the heart of downtown, right on
eerie.
Calhoun, right off King Street. This is a busy part of town. Everybody just kind of stopped and pay their respect.
I was a young reporter. It was very overwhelming.
Yeah.
You had the national networks there. I was there those days after, and then covered the funeral of Clementa Pinckney. Covered the Confederate flag coming down over the Capitol in Columbia, and it was just a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in, and even now, if we play the interview, it got me.
Yeah.
It got me. I got a little emotional because it's something that I'll never forget, and it was a young, fresh, new person in the news business to have something like that happen and to have it happen in your hometown.
Right.
It's a lot.
I don't even know if I really processed.
I don't think I have.
And I'm not trying to make it about me, but
for sure.
It's home.
It's home.
It's my second home. It's your home.
Right.
So it hits different when you hear something about a place that you love, and that church is a piece of a big piece of the fabric there in Charleston. So it's tough, and you pray for those families, and we had the fortune of having Charlotte City Councilman Malcolm Graham here in the studio, sitting where you are right now, and man, he was
inspirational.
I was about to say, what was your takeaway from that? Before we run the interview, what was your takeaway from that interview?
You'll hear in the interview, I do get a little bit emotional, and for him to speak on his sister, to say, do the work. Take, you can be sad and have those moments, but take that passion, take that emotion, and turn it into putting the work in.
Yeah, and he was very honest, right? Because he was like, it's not the time. He was talking about after the shooting. It's not the time to forgive the killer.
Correct.
And he was very honest about how he was how he felt. He gave a really sort of in-depth look at what his night was like, the night of the shooting. So here's that interview that we did recently with Charlotte City Councilman Malcolm Graham. Again, very, very insightful interview. That anniversary is tomorrow. Let's take a listen in. Man, this is it's a story that it hits home.
Yeah.
For both you and I, right?
Yes.
You're from Charleston.
I am.
I have family in Somerville. Charleston's like a second home. So when June 17th, 2015, let me set the scene for you. I was a younger reporter in the Myrtle Beach market, and I got the call and about what happened. I'm like, what? So I called my family, I called my brother who's in Somerville, and I'm like, Don't go anywhere. This is what happened. And so let me lay out what happened. So this June 17th, will mark 10 years since the Charleston church shooting, which claimed the lives of 9 people that attended a Bible study at Emmanuel AME Church, also known as Mother Emmanuel. Among those victims, Cynthia Graham Hurd. She was a beloved librarian, community leader there, and I remember just being in shock. I remember going there eventually to downtown Charleston to cover the story, the funeral, those events that followed after, and it didn't just grip the Charleston community, but it gripped the nation.
Yeah.
And I want to bring on our special guest. Charlotte City Councilman Malcolm Graham, grandfather,
for sure.
For sure, he has the grandkids in. As we approach the anniversary, we're less than 3 weeks away from that anniversary. 10 years.
Yeah.
What comes to mind? What are the feelings?
I miss my sister. Right. 10 years has gone since we lost her at the Emmanuel AME Church shooting, and each and every day I miss her even more. She was personable, sharp, candid, a community leader in Charleston. She didn't run for public office, but she chaired the Housing Authority Board of Directors, cared about affordable housing gentrification, 31-year employee of the Charleston County Library System.
Wow.
Worked at night for 16 years at the College of Charleston as their night librarian, and role model, big sister, and political advisor. Just my rock. My mother died when I was 21, so Cynthia not only served as a big sister, but also as a mother figure. And so 10 years passed. I miss her even more, and we celebrate her life. We don't dwell on how she died. We know how she died. We celebrate who she was and who she loved, and things that she cared about. And the library in Charleston is now named after her, the Cynthia Graham Hurd St. Andrews Regional Library. The College of Charleston highest academic scholarship is named after her, the Cynthia Graham Memorial Fund. And the University of South Carolina, where she received her master's degree in library science, has an anonymous donor donated well over $200,000 for a master's degree for African Americans who wants to be a librarian in her name. And so Cynthia used to joke with me all the time that I was the most famous person in the family because of my political pursuits, ran for Congress, served in the state Senate, did some other stuff, right? But certainly in her death, she's the most famous person in our family, and we're proud of her.
Oh, man. And I should have led with Malcolm Graham, the brother of Cynthia Graham Hurd. Take me back from the beginning. So from Charleston, what does Charleston mean to you, and what was that like growing up with Cynthia in Charleston?
Yeah, born and raised in Charleston on Benson Street between Hughie and Congress.
Okay.
Went to James Simmons Elementary, the whole high school of Charleston. I came to Charlotte on the tennis scholarship, so I played lots of tennis tournaments in the Charleston area at the Jack Adams tennis courts on Congress Street near the Citadel Football Stadium. Cynthia was my big sister by 5 years. Number 6 of a family of 6 children to Henrietta and Melvin Graham.
Oh, wow.
Emmanuel was a part of the fabric of our life, right? My mom went to Emmanuel. My grandmother went to Emmanuel. They both sung in the choir. My siblings and relatives all went to Emmanuel. My big sister Jackie got married there. I found the Lord there, said Easter speeches there. My father and my mother are buried in the graveyard there. Now Cynthia is as well. And so her death was shocking because not only did it happen in Charleston, but it happened in the place that we knew very, very well.
And that church, if you're not familiar, it's on Calhoun. That's Calhoun Street, right?
Yeah, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
110 Calhoun Street, this progressive African-American church, black church, Calhoun Street, John C. Calhoun, who was a racist, who was a member of the Klan, who wanted black folks to be dealt with and serve as cattle, right? And so all over Charleston, you got this history everywhere.
You have so many reminders in downtown Charleston,
Yeah,
all over
for
Charleston,
sure,
quite
for
frankly,
sure.
of the horrors of slavery and,
Yeah.
and racism.
Yeah, for sure.
But that church is like the fabric of that community.
Yes.
I just passed that church. I was in Charleston last month for the Cooper Ridge Bridge Run.
You ran it?
I ran it.
Okay.
I made
Successfully?
it. I did. I did. But I got a chance to pass that church, and every time I'm in that area, I pass that church, I get chills because I just remember. I just go back to that time. 10 years ago.
It's and I wrote a book.
Yeah.
The Way Forward, and we talk about growing up in Charleston and what the church meant to me and my family, and how Charleston is so historic. I mean, it's hard to find a bad meal in Charleston.
Right.
If you love history, history's everywhere. If you love water's everywhere. It's a great city with the interesting past, right?
Yeah.
My mom would call Charleston nice, nasty, right? Nice on the outside, but then when you start peeling away from it based on its history, some unpleasantries with the community. 10 years ago, Charleston past became its present, right? With the killing of Cynthia and 8 others. We don't talk about that 5 other people survived the shooting that were there in the room. Polly Shepard, Felicia Saunders, the wife of Reverend Pinckney, her 2 kids, Felicia Saunders' grandkid. They were all in the room or in an adjoining room that survived the shooting. And, when you talk about Charleston and the history of racism and slavery, etc., that night, its past became its present.
That moment in time, you mentioned Senator Pinckney, Reverend Senator Pinckney.
Senator Pinckney.
Yeah. State Senator Pinckney. I remember covering that funeral, and it's one of those moments that is etched in your mind forever, because everybody was dressed in all black, and it was so hot out there. So many people. That service was a beautiful. It was a long service.
It was a long service.
I think we were waiting for President Obama to get there.
We were.
What do you remember from that day?
It was crazy, right? Reverend Pinckney I knew because he was a state senator in South Carolina. I was a state senator in North Carolina. Obviously, when I would come home, I would go to Emmanuel, I would see him, so I knew him as well. Surreal, him being gone. Thousands of people there honoring him. The President of the United States there.
Leaders in Congress.
Leaders of Congress. Everyone was there. Sung this amazing choir that sung the Old Ship of Zion. Remember that song?
I remember, yeah.
The President gave such a eulogy and then sung Amazing Grace. And then Cynthia Graham Hurd found that grace. Funny story. I ran for the U.S. Congress, and Cynthia helped me with all my campaigns. And so she said, I'm going to help you get to Congress because obviously I want you to win, but if you win, I might get a chance to meet Michelle and Barack Obama. Unfortunately, we lost that campaign to Alma Adams. We came in second, so she didn't get the opportunity to meet them in life. But she met them in death, because after he sung Amazing Grace, he and Michelle met with me and my family for well over 45 minutes and talked to us about Cynthia and about a wide variety of issues. Obviously, he mentioned her name when he said Cynthia Graham found that grace after he sung Amazing Grace. And so while she didn't get the opportunity to meet him in life, she met him and Michelle in death. I told the president, said, with all due respect, she was more interested in meeting Michelle than you. And he said, well, I get that all the time, right? So you're not offending me. I've heard it before. So it was, and that night was the first night we actually saw Cynthia in death as a family. We went right from the president's meeting with us to Fielding's funeral home, where we actually were able to be with Cynthia and comfort her in death and see her for the first time. It's just, it was a long day.
Oh, man. You've done so much work to honor her legacy with the foundation. What was that period? how long was that period from grieving to going out to, okay, I got to do something and to remember my sister?
It was immediately, right?
So it wasn't a long period?
No, it was immediately. It was immediately. I was at home watching the news. Unwritten rule in my household: I'm a political creature. My wife is not. No CNN, no MSNBC, no Fox News in the bedroom, and I'm there breaking the rules. 9 o'clock at night, breaking news, CNN, shooting at Emmanuel AME Church, 9 fair dead. And I called Cynthia. Cynthia was my touch point, Charleston. Something like that happening in Charleston at the church. She would kind of know what was going on, so I called her, and obviously she didn't answer. And about 35 minutes went by. The news reports on all the channels got even worse. And then my niece called me and said, hey, we can't find Aunt Cynthia. We think she went to Bible study. And then right then you get this sickness feeling in your stomach that something bad had occurred. About an hour went by, 2 hours went by, no call from Cynthia. Chief Rodney Monroe, who was the police chief here in Charlotte at the time, I called and said, can you give me any information what's going on down there? And he said, let me see what I can do. And he called me back about an hour later, say, hey, from those who survived the shooting, they identified Cynthia as being at the church at the time of the shooting. Didn't say she was dead or alive, whatever, just making sure that I knew that she was there. And then immediately I just knew. You get this sixth sense. Yeah. And immediately when I saw her that night for the first time after Obama's speech, I was like, I'm going to be your voice. I'm going to be your advocate. At that point in time, people were saying that they forgave, right, the shooter. And I was like, no, we're not going to. It is too early to talk about forgiveness. We got to create what I call some healthy tension. There were some hard questions that needed to be asked, some more information that we needed to know. Did he act alone? Was this, just all those things that we needed to focus on other than the forgiveness of the killer. Right? And so immediately I wanted to be her voice. I was a different opinion from those who were saying we forgive. I'm like, no, we got some questions to ask. And so I began to be her advocate, about the naming of the library, which happened like 3 days after she was killed, right at the county council meeting. Being her advocate when they were talking about bringing down the Confederate flag, being her advocate at court, being her advocate that although she died with 9 others, she was her own person. She had her own space. She had her own family, right? So making sure that people remembered her. Not the Emmanuel 9, I get it, but remembering Cynthia, right? And I continue to be her advocate for things that matter. And so, you just keep, like, favorite models is that we use about Cynthia and the foundation is keep the faith and do the work, right? Just focus on the work. And so it's the work of, after Charleston, the library renamed, planning her homecoming service, planning the obituary, planning meeting with the President Obama. She's an AKA, working with the AKAs to form their Beyond the Wall ceremony, which is a going away ceremony, working with Nikki Haley and the South Carolina General Assembly about bringing the flag down. There's a picture of me when she signed the bill. I'm standing right behind her when she signed the bill, right? So I kept busy doing the work, being an advocate for not only her, but for a race of people, right? Because Cynthia would have said, although I died that night and 9 others died with me, 8 others died with me, the attack really was against a race of people, not just me and Reverend Pinckney, Sharonda Singleton. It was anyone who happened to be there and who happened to be black. So it didn't matter who they were, what their backgrounds were. The only thing that mattered that night was that they were there and that they were black. Dr. King said that when he gave the eulogy at the 16th Avenue Baptist Church, where 4 little girls were killed in a bombing, he said, pay little attention to the killer and more attention to the system that produced the killer. And so I use all that time is to try to work in my city council work, or my past life as a state senator or congressional candidate, is to try to fix systems so that everyone can feel that they're playing and working from an equal perspective. And as you can tell with this new administration, there's a lot of systems that we need to fix. The political system, where there's an attack on black history, an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, an attack on banning books, which Cynthia as a librarian would be like crazy about. No, we can't do this. Focusing on education about what universities can do and what they can't do and what they can teach. The border, we should have immigration policies. I agree with that, but you can't allow 51 white Afrikaners to come to the country, and then you're kicking out all black and brown folks. And so we got to create an environment where healthy tension can exist, where we can kind of speak truth to power, and really begin to stand up for the rights of people. There's no denying that the demographics of our country is changing, right? And we can't make America great by going back 40 years at a time wasn't so great for folks that look like me and you, right? And so we got to do the work.
What would Cynthia say now? What do you think she would say now to the work that you're doing? And you made that pact with yourself 10 years ago that you were going to keep her name alive. You're doing that. You continue to do the work. What would she say?
She would say, keep the faith, do the work. Keep the faith, do the work. Keep the faith, do the work. And that's why I kind of wrote the book, The Way Forward, which talks about, okay, we know how she died, right? We're not going to focus on that. But what do we have to do as a nation, as a society, to move forward? What type of examples do we need to demonstrate to encourage everybody, black, white, rich, poor, young, old, that we're all in this together, that we're all going to die, that we all bleed red, and that somehow we got to kind of do the work. And that's why the book was so 10 years later for me to kind of put my personal feelings in writing. I'm an author that didn't bring a book to an interview should be penalized, right? I'm grabbing the grandkids, and I grab everything.
You had your hands full.
Their book bags, their raincoats, their 2-year-old's diapers. I got everything I need except the book, right? The book is the way forward, and it honors Cynthia by writing what happened from my perspective day by day, gives a little history lesson about Charleston, and then it really focuses on, okay, now what do we do? How do we move forward? We got a big town hall meeting in Charleston on June 12th. My good friend Bakari Sellers is going to be down there with me to moderate a panel discussion with some outstanding panelists. The young lady who's the president and CEO of the African American History Museum in Charleston, she'll be with Bakari and I talking about the book. And we'll be June 12th in Charleston at Emmanuel Church. Tanya Tuppence with the Signs of the Time here in Charlotte will be traveling to Charleston with me on June 12th to help us start that town hall meeting with praise and worship, just honoring Cynthia. Wow. That's the faith, keep the faith, and then the work is working with Bakari and others to say, okay, now what? What are we going to do? And so keep the faith, do the work. Keep the faith, do the work. Keep the faith, do the work is what Cynthia would say. And she would probably, Cynthia was a big Jesse Jackson fan, she would say, Jesse said one time that tears and sweat are both salty, but they render different results. Tears will get you sympathy, sweat will get you change. And so we all need to dry our eyes, right? Keep the faith, and then do the work. And the work is hard work, the work right now in 2025 is speaking truth to power. And you can get penalized for that, as you can see what's happening in current times. But Cynthia would say, keep the faith, Malcolm, do the work. Proud of you for writing this book. The biggest honor is when I went down to Charleston for a book signing, and the librarian walked me to the section of the library where the book was kept. And I thought that was cool. And Cynthia probably would say, this guy can't even string a sentence together. Now he's writing books. Yeah, so she would want us just to kind of do the work, figure it out. You know, just don't take a knee, fight the power, create healthy tension, and remember that she lived.
You mentioned the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and I remember bumping into Reverend Jesse Jackson at the state capitol, South Carolina State Capitol, when the Confederate flag came down. There's so much going on. So, I'm a reporter, and I'm walking through the thousands of people, and I'm like, oh, wow, Jesse Jackson.
Well, he actually gave the eulogy at Cynthia's funeral.
Yeah. There was so much that happened during that time.
I have a long relationship with Reverend Jackson. When I ran for state senate in North Carolina, when calls was a new thing, he did a robocall for me, endorsing my candidacy. I used to manage a nonprofit organization here in Charlotte, and he came to be my dinner speaker when he was a presidential candidate. And obviously, he reached out upon Cynthia's death, and we invited him to share, and he did an amazing job putting in perspective of what happened then, things that he fought for, and what happened 10 years ago at Emmanuel.
Wow. Carlene, do you have a question? Carlene's a Charleston native, too.
I am a Charleston.
She's a Charleston girl. Charleston girl.
It's more of a question. I just say thank you for keeping her voice alive and keeping this story alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so many people that move to the Carolinas every day that probably don't realize the impact of what that day was. And so thank you for continuing to share Cynthia's story.
Well, thank you, Charlestonian. And it's and tears are good.
Tears are good. I mean, it's been a minute, but just like
tears are good.
It takes you right back to it,
and
you know?
Sometimes, you know, I remember one time, two stories. One, my daughters, who were college kids at that time when she died. Cynthia just was at our house for Courtney's graduation from Winston-Salem State that May. Mm-hmm. And my other daughter was away at summer school at UNCG that summer when she died. And they said, "Daddy, we've never seen you cry." And they, you know, and so it hurts, right? And it means that you're in touch with your humanity, right? That's black, white, rich, poor, it doesn't matter. You kind of understand what happened. And so I kind of get where people said the faith we forgive, right? I kind of get it, but it's so Charleston, right? Charleston is one of those towns. My mom was a domestic worker, my father a truck driver, and in that black-white relationship back in, again, I'm 62, right? Back in when I was a high school kid was pretty sharp, right? Mm-hmm. And so folks would just want to just get along. Let's do what we got to do to get along. Let's not make any waves, right? And so I understood where the forgiveness thing came from. Sometimes you just got to make some waves, right? And ask the tough questions. And so I really appreciate you. I appreciate the tears, because again, one night I was just taking a shower and just started crying, right? You know, just thinking about her.
Yeah, that release.
Yeah.
It's just that release of emotion is kind of like like a volcano.
Yeah.
You let that sort of rumble underneath the surface. Yeah. It's going to erupt at some point.
Yeah.
Oh man, and I just want to give we talk about the Charleston area. I just want to give a shout out to Somerville, Monk's Corner, North Charleston,
Goose Creek,
the
Creek, right? West Ashley, Johns Island, James Island, right?
It changes so much.
Walla Island for those who go to the country.
Walterboro, all those things.
Walterboro.
It changes so much every time I go back. It changes so much. I don't know if y'all feel like that.
Oh my gosh! Every time I go home,
you know this.
Oh, yeah.
If you go to Charleston, when the College of Charleston is in session, and you go on King Street on a Friday or Saturday night, it's like you're on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. It is just the police have blocked off the street. There's foot traffic from the Battery, literally all the way down to, I guess, not Meeting Street. Where's the old Piggly Wiggly used to be?
up near it's up near isn't it Meeting?
Yeah. Go further down Meeting Street by where old C.A. Brown High School used to be over there, and that's where folks really didn't go over there. They didn't go over there. Right? It was pretty rough, but now it is flowing of people and traffic, and it's a life that I kind of like. But again, is that what my mom says, that nice nasty, right? And you start peeling away, and that's why understanding our history is so important in reference to what happened in Charleston, or what happened at the 16th Avenue Baptist Church with the little girls who were bombed by Klansmen, or what happened during slavery, Jim Crow, or segregation. We cannot just erase that history as though it didn't happen. We have to learn from it and embrace it as a country, versus trying to pretend that it didn't exist, or pretend that there's no 4-star generals that are African Americans in the Army, or that somehow diversity is not a strength for our country or our state. So we just gotta use Charleston as a living example of history, not just Black history, but American history, and be able to learn from it.
That is Malcolm Graham, a proud brother, grandfather, father, husband.
And they have behaved themselves tremendously.
The best guest.
Carter 4, Ashton 2, and a shameless plug. You can get the book, The Way Forward, Amazon online, Barnes & Noble online, or you can go to the Park Road bookstore in the Park Road Shopping Center and get the book, The Way Forward.
And the town hall is June 12th.
June 12th, 6 o'clock p.m., Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh man, this was awesome. You are always welcome back here on Live Impact News. So thank you for your time. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great.
Of course. All right. That was a fantastic interview with Malcolm Graham. Some great insight. Again, his sister, Cynthia Graham Hurd, one of the victims there in that Charleston church shooting at Mother Emanuel. This is a live look in downtown Charleston, beautiful downtown Charleston. And this week, so since actually May 20th, Mother Emanuel has been doing events surrounding the 10-year anniversary. Tomorrow, on the actual day of the anniversary, there will be a service from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Mother Emanuel, and it will continue throughout the entire week. Until pretty much the end of the month, they're doing things to commemorate the anniversary and reflect back on that day. So again, that is a live look there in downtown Charleston. And I'm sure it's hot in downtown Charleston. I'm sure. I was just thinking, I'm like, it looks beautiful, but if you're out there, you're not getting a sea breeze in downtown Charleston. I think people who don't know.
You get a little breeze, but it's not.
It's not enough.
You're not on the beach.
It's not enough. So it's hot there. It's hot here. But we're actually tracking some thunderstorms in the eastern part of the state. James, what are you looking at?
Yeah, so this is new to us. We've got a severe thunderstorm warning out towards Fayetteville in central North Carolina, Nick. So this does include locations such as Fayetteville, Rayford, Fort Liberty, Hope Mills, Silver City, and Rockfish. And as you've heard Chief Meteorologist Brad Penovich say time and time again, a severe thunderstorm warning means there are 60-mile-per-hour winds and/or quarter-size hail. That's 1-inch size hail. So when they say quarter-size hail, they mean the size of the coin, the quarter. So we have our first severe warning of the day here in the Carolinas as we start to see activity on radar at this hour, Nick.
Yeah, and if you know some folks in the area, and there are a lot of folks here in the Charlotte area with connections to Eastern North Carolina, Fayetteville specifically, let them know. Give them a heads up. If you're in the Fayetteville area, you can still watch Live Impact News because we cover a lot what's happening in the state. Let's get a check of our forecast here at home. Here is meteorologist Becca Birdsall. Let's take a listen in.
Good Monday afternoon. We are gearing up for a hot and humid day that's going to be feeling like the middle to upper 90s across much of the area. Will likely only continue to feel hotter as we head towards midweek. There is also going to be a chance for some thunderstorms, not going to be widespread, more of that hit or miss activity that we've been seeing over the past several days. We'll continue that into today. On par with that, there is an active flood watch for a couple of our counties that we'll get to in a moment. Highs today will reach the upper 80s to lower 90s across much of the metro area and middle 70s for the high country. But in the metro, when you factor in the heat and humidity, it's likely going to be feeling close to around 96, 97 for today. So that's what you're going to want to prepare for as you step outdoors today. What you can expect pretty much today is scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Again, not widespread, but any downpour that does develop, and especially those slow moving ones, could dump a lot of rain, and isolated flash flooding will be possible with heat index values well above 90 degrees. Now let's talk about the heat first, as the high temperatures for today will only be a couple of degrees above that normal high for this time of year, and that's combined with dew points in the lower 70s, meaning even though our actual high temperatures will be in the upper 80s, peak heat index value will reach 97 for today, 99 tomorrow, and then start to reach the triple digits by both Wednesday and Thursday and still remain hot towards the end of the work week. June is also the month where we have the strongest sun angle. It actually peaks the summer solstice, which comes on Friday, and right on par with that, our UV index is at a 10. That is a very high and a burn time of about 15 minutes. So it's important not only to hydrate today, but sunscreen and hats, sunglasses will all be needed for much of this week ahead. Why we're so hot is that Bermuda high pressure system that I've been talking about pretty much all weekend long, driving in all of that tropical air across the southeast, bringing hazy, hot, and humid conditions all across the Carolinas. We're already starting to see a couple of downpours develop in and around that area, and we'll continue to see that later on this afternoon. During the early evening hours, you can see some of these could pack a punch with those slow moving downpours, and of course frequent lightning also going to be a concern with this system. We are under a low to medium excessive rainfall risk. This is mainly going to be for the locations that really saw more of that significant rainfall from the past 48 hours. But again, any slow moving downpour, just because of how saturated the soils are, will have a chance for some localized flooding. And in accordance with that, a couple of counties have been added to a flood watch until about midnight tonight for some of our mountain communities as well as our most eastern counties. You'll notice the metro has been left out of this, not necessarily because there's not going to be any flooding, but any flooding that does occur will be localized. It's been a wet month so far. In fact, we've picked up over 3 inches of rain, and we're only halfway through the month of June. That is a departure from normal, above an inch, and it's done wonders for that drought monitor. It's basically eliminated the drought that we had, especially in the spring. The month of May brought above average rainfall for us as well. So from the mountains into the metro, pretty much across the entire state of North and South Carolina, don't have to worry about a drought. Summer officially begins this Friday at 10:41 p.m. We have a forecasted high of about 90 degrees, but you will not have to wait that long for it to feel like summer. Here is this 7-day forecast. For today, high temperatures, upper 80s, feeling more like the middle to upper 90s. Tonight into early tomorrow morning, those lows will bottom down into the lower 70s. Then we'll do it all again, but it's only going to be hotter. Highs will make it into the lower 90s, and this will likely be the start of our heat wave. A heat wave is 3 consecutive days with at least 90 degree or above temperatures. That's exactly what we have in the forecast.
And that's your forecast. It's going to be hot. I mean, it's that time of year, so it's hot in the Carolinas. I'm going to complain because that's naturally what I do, but hey, it is what it is. So make sure you are using that sunscreen. Make sure you are you have that water in hand and staying hydrated. So we want to get back to a story that we had the first hour of the show, and we're talking about the shootings involving a couple of Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses. So what we learned today, and this is from NBC News, the suspect wanted in the slaying of a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband, as well as in the shooting of a state senator and his wife, was found Sunday night armed and crawling in a field in a sparsely populated area of Minnesota. That was according to authorities. Now, Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz announced Vance Bolter was captured, and he announced that at a news conference and said, quote, "The crime is politically motivated." And so we got some updates as far as his charges. Bolter, who was in custody, is now facing state and federal charges in connection to the shootings on Saturday. And after that press conference we heard from earlier today, and we brought it here to you on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus from federal officials, we got a breakdown from a reporter from our content partner there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Care 11. Listen to that breakdown because he goes by the new information that we have right now, page by page. Let's listen into that.
Releasing a lot of new details concerning the political assassination of Representative Melissa Hortman, her husband, and the shooting of Senator John Hoffman and his wife. First and foremost, the feds are filing charges, murder charges, against him, which will, at this point, take precedence over the state charges that have been filed. And Vance Bolter will make his first court appearance in just a little bit here at 1:30 at the federal courthouse in St. Paul. The most serious charges that are filed do carry the possibility of the death penalty. And Acting U.S. Attorney Thompson said that they will make a decision whether they will choose to seek the death penalty or not. During the course of the press conference, released chilling new details from the night of the attacks, including the fact that Bolter stopped at the homes of two other lawmakers, one in New Hope and one in Maple Grove, and thankfully those lawmakers were not home at the time, and that would explain the hour and a half that took place in between the shootings at the Hoffman house and the shootings at the Hortman house. Also clarified were details concerning park officers that arrived at the Hortman house, literally witnessing the murders taking place. He was apparently outside the house when the police arrived, and he began shooting, possibly at officers, but for sure they witnessed him shooting into the house, enter the house, and commit the murders there at the Hortman house. Thankfully, because of that, they were able to, as we've been reporting, stop his shooting spree. They took control of his vehicle. He ditched his vest and his gun at the scene there. And within his car, we now learn that they found a total of 5 different weapons. We also received some clarification on what's been referred to as a manifesto, and again, that it's not like it's not a Unabomber-style manifesto that more clearly gives the ideology and political reasons for doing what he's doing, but that he had notebooks that included maps and research about their addresses. The names were Democrats. They clarified that, including elected officials and supporters of abortion rights. And so as far as motive goes, they clarified that they believe it was motivated and that his victims were Democratic lawmakers, but as far as getting more into the granular details of the ideology and reasons behind his motive beyond that, they don't have more information at this time. I asked a question about whether he confessed last night after being arrested and provide more details about why he did what he did, and they would not comment on that, so those details remain left to come out. They clarified that this was something that he had been planning for some time, and they attribute the evidence of the research that he had done in finding their addresses and the various things that he had written in the notebooks. Why don't you let me take a look at that criminal complaint? This was just filed. This is the criminal complaint that has the new charges in it, and I believe it'll have some of the photographs that we just saw in during the press conference, including, this is the image that had been released already of Belter knocking on the front door of the Hoffman household. That's where the surveillance camera was. Concerning the shooting, they went through specifically how he was able to enter the home, shining the flashlight in their faces as he repeatedly knocked and said, "This is police, this is police." Once the door was open and the flashlight was out of their faces, they realized it was not an officer, and Senator Hoffman attempted to push him out of the house, and at that point, that's when he shot Senator Hoffman and went inside and shot his wife, Yvette, as well. These pictures right here are from another doorbell that he rang after that. I believe this is the one in Maple Grove, either Maple Grove or New Hope. These are images taken from a doorbell cam there, where thankfully the official is not home. When he reached New Hope, there actually was an interaction with a police officer from New Hope who had gone by there to check actually on that politician's home. The officer apparently was confused and thought that he may actually be another officer who went there to help. She apparently rolled down the window and had interaction with him, and he just looked forward and refused to answer her, and he drove off at that point. This is a photo that shows the police-style lights that he had on his black SUV to make it look as if it was a police vehicle. Now, the license plate itself doesn't exactly look realistic, but it shows that he had police written on his license plate to disguise his vehicle as a police vehicle. This picture right here may be hard to see, but it's the footage when they arrived to the Hortman home, and he's standing outside the Hortman home right before he opened fire and entered that home. This picture here is the inside of his SUV. I believe these, according to the criminal complaint that was filed in Hennepin County, are AK-47 automatic rifles, a total of 5 of them, as well as there was another 9mm handgun in there. There's a notebook right on the driver's seat and other materials there. Okay, this is some photographs that we haven't seen yet. These are photographs of the actual notebook. Intellius, benverified.com, ownerly.com, these are all like public records websites that people could use. So apparently this is some of the things that he used in order to track down the people. Now here is some more writings with notes on some of the online searches that he has done. County Assessor's webpage using the GIS tool to look at property records. This is very, very involved searching through available public records that are online that he apparently used to find the addresses of the people that he attacked. Now here's a look at the Beretta 9mm handgun, the murder weapon that they were able to retrieve outside in the grass after he fled through the back of the Hortman home. And then here is the face mask that was recovered, also found outside the home. Let's see if there's any other photographs here. They found an online picture of the mask from like a website that he would have found to buy it from. They called it a hyper-realistic latex mask that he used to disguise himself when he knocked on the doors. And then here is, as we reported over the weekend, these images were taken from a bank. He went to U.S. Bank. It says that he, okay, there's more details in here, and we will flesh this out throughout the day, but it appears that he bought an e-bike and a Buick from a person after, at some point here, in order to facilitate his escape. It looks like he withdrew more than $2,000 from a U.S. Bank branch in Robbinsdale after the shooting. Okay, he met a man at a bus stop in North Minneapolis that he had no prior connection to. Belter had 2 duffel bags with him, and he asked to purchase an e-bike from the witness. They traveled to the witness's house, and Belter agreed to purchase his Buick sedan as well. So he bought that getaway car and an e-bike from just a random person that he met at a bus stop, according to this criminal complaint. Here's a map showing, this aligns with the video footage that we showed throughout the day yesterday when the Buick was found on the side of the road in Sibley County on Highway 25, about 5 miles away from his home in Green Isle. It says that as they searched the vehicle, among other things, they found the cowboy hat, which of course we showed was in front of the vehicle, as well as a handwritten letter directed to the FBI. In that letter, he claimed his name was Dr. Vance Luther Belter. He admitted to being the shooter at large in Minnesota involving the 2 shootings that morning. So he apparently left a note in the vehicle confessing to the crimes. And then it goes on to say at about 9:10 last night, they located him in a field close by and took him into custody. So just going through this very quickly, a document that I haven't read yet, along with information from the press conference. There are a lot more details that we're going to sift through and be able to report today. Chilling details, a political assassination that is now being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'll send it back to you.
As you heard there from that reporter from KARE 11, chilling details there from that situation, shooting involving a couple of Minnesota lawmakers. All right, so we want to give you an update on a story that we've been following. We brought you this as breaking news earlier in the show. One person seriously hurt in a shooting in North Charlotte. We got that from Medic. The shooting happened along Tanglebrook Lane. And I believe we have Bria Smith. Ready? Okay. Let's. So Bria Smith is there at the scene. She got there moments ago. So Bria, what are you learning there at the scene right now?
Nick, I'm not sure we have sound coming in from her, but we do have an interview she recently recorded.
Okay, yeah, we don't hear Bria at this time. We'll try to get back to Bria, but let's get back to an interview that she did moments ago with a neighbor or somebody within the area of that shooting. Let's take a listen into that interview.
Tim Baskins, Timbaskins.
Awesome. So talk to us a little bit about the neighborhood. Just kind of describe on a day-to-day basis what the environment's like.
I've been here since 2008, and it's been maybe one incident since I've been staying here. It's a very quiet neighborhood generally. If the cops are here, it's not for anything like this. So generally very quiet, no real issues.
Absolutely. You said you live close by, so kind of talk about when you first started to notice the commotion going on. Just describe that.
I literally was coming back from an oil change, and cops was blazing by me, and they turned into my neighborhood, and they made all the turns like they was coming to my street. So I just came behind them really quickly to make sure it wasn't my house that they was coming to.
Absolutely. You mentioned that you kind of knew, obviously your neighbors here.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of describe that dynamic there. Are you guys a pretty tight-knit neighborhood?
Yes, very tight-knit. I don't think there's a person in this neighborhood who doesn't know someone that stays at a house. Like, I don't think there's anyone that's just like a loner that no one knows. Like, I knew someone that stayed at the house. I'm not sure what happened there, but I did know someone that stayed in possibly where the incident happened at.
Absolutely. So you don't think that they might be related or anything?
I don't know. I did call the person that I knew stayed there. They didn't answer the phone, so I'm not sure.
Absolutely. Are you worried, about, something else or worse happening? Does this make you more apprehensive or a little bit worried?
I mean, honestly, the whole city seems to be getting slightly worse, so yeah, it does. Yeah.
Tim, if you could, you mentioned this is a quiet neighborhood. Talk about your surprise or shock even when you find out that a young woman was shot.
It's very shocking in this neighborhood. I know we are close to Badersford Road, but this area seems to be like a bright spot for not entertaining what generally happens on the main street. So once you come off of Badersford Road, past Gilbert into this neighborhood, it just kind of quiets down and it chills out a bit. So it's very shocking and it's a little unnerving.
Talk a little bit about the police presence here. Are you happy that they were able to handle the situation?
Nah, I was very shocked. Like, the police came when I came, and as quickly as everything moved, I was very shocked. I seen detectives out here very quickly. So yeah, they was moving very quickly, and I was happy to see that.
Did you see any EMS, fire trucks, anything like that?
I seen the EMS when I pulled in, but I kind of know the protocol that they can't necessarily go down there until they secure the scene. So I seen the EMS sitting there waiting for the police to secure the scene, which they seem to have done pretty quickly.
Absolutely. That's all the questions I have. Anything else you want to mention?
No. I didn't mind talking. I know the neighborhood. I've been here for a while, so when you guys asked me to speak, I didn't mind speaking on my neighborhood.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate
You're very welcome.
Be safe.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
And again, that was a neighbor on the scene. He was describing the neighborhood. He was also just giving his general reaction to what was taking place there. So we're going to try to get back to WCNC Charlotte's Bria Smith. She's live there on the scene. I see her shot. So Bria, we tried to come to you earlier, but I just want to come back to you. So what do you know? What did you just learn there at the scene?
Absolutely, Nick. So you heard there, we had the chance to speak to one neighbor, and I was actually just moments ago speaking to a few other neighbors who live in this area who say kind of the same thing, that it's pretty quiet. Law enforcement investigators did kind of clear this scene here just about 10 minutes ago. So really, we're going to just work on gathering more information, and we'll keep you guys updated as we learn more. Nick, back to you.
And that's Bria Smith live there on the scene at Tanglebrook Lane. That's in North Charlotte. We'll be sure to check in with her as soon as we can. Bria, thank you for that information. Again, we're going to keep an eye on that story. Again, one person seriously hurt in that shooting. That's in the Beatties Ford area in North Charlotte. Let's pivot to another big story. It's been a busy afternoon here on the stream. We have a lot going on, not only here but across the country. We want to get back to a story that we started with, and that was the shooting of the Minnesota lawmakers from over the weekend. We have a suspect. He is facing federal charges. He also is facing state charges. We heard from state officials there in Minnesota, but we also heard from federal officials about those charges, the nature of the crime. Let's take a listen in. In case you missed that press conference, let's take a listen in.
Now, breaking news from KARE 11.
Against Vance Luther Belter for his horrific attack on our state and our elected representatives. Political assassinations are rare. They strike at the very core of our democracy. But the details of Belter's crime are even worse. They are truly chilling. It is no exaggeration to say that his crimes are the stuff of nightmares. Belter stalked his victims like prey. He went to their homes, held them out as a police officer, and shot them in cold blood. Now, there's been a lot of information and misinformation out there about Belter's crimes. We have filed a detailed 20-page complaint and affidavit that sets forth what happened in this case. I'd like to share some of that information with you now. In the early morning hours of June 14th, Belter went to the homes of 4 Minnesota state politicians with the intent to kill them. Belter first traveled to the home of Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman in Champlin, Minnesota. Belter arrived at the senator's home disguised as a police officer. He arrived in a black SUV with emergency lights turned on and with a license plate that read police. Belter wore a black tactical vest and body armor. He carried a flashlight and a Beretta 9mm handgun. He also wore a hyper-realistic silicone mask. Senator Hoffman had a security camera. I've seen the footage from that camera, and it is chilling. Belter knocked on Senator Hoffman's front door and repeatedly shouted, "This is the police, open the door." Senator Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, came to the door. When they opened the door, Belter shined the flashlight in their faces and said there had been a shooting reported in the house. Belter asked, When Belter lowered his flashlight, which he had shined in their face, they realized that he was not a police officer. They shouted out, "You're not a cop. You're not a police officer." Belter then announced, "This is a robbery," and forced himself into their home. When Senator Hoffman attempted to push Belter out and stop him from entering his home, Belter shot him repeatedly. Belter then shot Miss Hoffman repeatedly. Belter fled the scene, and the Hoffman's daughter called 911. Unfortunately, the Hoffmans survived, although they remain hospitalized. After shooting Senator Hoffman and his wife, Belter traveled to the home of another Minnesota state representative in Maple Grove, Minnesota. Video surveillance showed that Belter rang the doorbell at the state representative's house at approximately 2:24 a.m. on Friday night. Again, he was dressed as a law enforcement officer, wearing a tactical vest and body armor, carrying a handgun and a flashlight, and wearing that same hyper-realistic silicone mask. Again, the images, as you can see on the screen, are haunting. Now, fortunately, the state representative was not home. She and her family were gone on vacation, and so Belter left. Belter then traveled to the home of a Minnesota state senator who lived in New Hope, Minnesota. He parked in the street in that same black SUV with the police license plate. At about 2:36 a.m. on Friday night, after learning of the shooting of Senator Hoffman, New Hope police dispatched an officer to conduct a wellness check on the state senator who lived in New Hope. When the New Hope officer arrived at the scene, she saw Belter's black SUV parked down the block with the lights on. The New Hope police officer believed that Belter was a police officer who had been dispatched to the scene to check on the status of the state senator. The New Hope police officer pulled up next to Belter in his car, rolled down her window, and attempted to speak with him. Belter did not respond. According to the officer, he just sat there and stared straight ahead. So the New Hope police officer, who had been dispatched to the scene, proceeded to the state senator's home, and she waited for other law enforcement to arrive. When they did, by the time they did, Belter had left the scene. Belter then traveled to Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, in the home of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman. At approximately 3:30 a.m., Belter arrived at Representative Hortman's house in his black SUV with the police license plates. He parked in the driveway and left the emergency lights on his SUV flashing, as if he was a police officer. Belter approached Representative Hortman's home, again dressed as a police officer, wearing the tactical vest and body armor, and wearing that hyper-realistic mask. He was armed and carrying a flashlight. Before he entered the home, 2 Brooklyn Park police officers arrived at the scene. They too had been dispatched to check on Representative Hortman after learning of the shooting of Senator Hoffman. When they arrived at the scene, they saw Belter's black SUV parked in the driveway with the emergency lights flashing, and they saw Belter standing in front of the house several feet from the door. When Belter saw the officers get out of the car, he drew his weapon and began firing. He rushed into the house through the front door, firing into it. He repeatedly fired into the house, and when he entered, he murdered Representative Hortman and her husband, Mark. The Brooklyn Park police officers fired at Belter as he rushed into the home, but he escaped into the home and out the back. Officers recovered Belter's 9mm Beretta, along with the body armor and the mask, behind the home along his path of flight when he fled on foot. They later searched Belter's car, where they found 5 more firearms, including assault-style rifles and a large quantity of ammunition. Belter also had in his car notebooks containing a list of more than 45 Minnesota state and federal elected officials, including Representative Hortman. Now, Belter planned his attack carefully. He researched his victims and their families. He used the internet and other tools to find their addresses and names, the names of their family members. He conducted surveillance of their homes and took notes about the location of their homes. He also prepared in other ways. He concealed himself as a police officer, outfitting his black SUV with police lights and a police license plate, wearing a black tactical vest and body armor, carrying a police flashlight and a handgun. And of course he wore that hyper-realistic silicone mask as seen on the surveillance videos. The video of his arrival and shooting of Senator Hoffman is truly chilling. Again, it's no exaggeration to say this is the stuff of nightmares. There's a photo of the firearms found in Belter's abandoned SUV. Based on these crimes, we brought a federal complaint charging Beltner with an array of federal charges. Counts 1 and 2 charge him with stalking. Count 1 charges him with stalking Representative Melissa Hortman using interstate facilities. And that's Title 18, United States Code 2261. The statutory penalties there are life in prison. Count 2, similarly, charges him with stalking State Senator John Hoffman using interstate facilities. The maximum penalty of that count is 20 years in prison. Counts 3 and 4 charge Belter with the murder of Melissa and of the Hortmans using a firearm in violation of 18 U.S.C. 924J. And these are punishable by a term of life imprisonment or even death. And counts 5 and 6 charge him with shooting the Hortmans and the Hoffmans using a firearm, and both of those counts also carry a maximum sentence of life in prison. Now, before I finish my remarks, I want to say a little bit about law enforcement and the manhunt that we've heard about the last 2 days. Over the past 48 hours, federal, state, and local law enforcement from throughout the state of Minnesota have worked together to carry out the largest manhunt in Minnesota history. Now, a lot has been said about law enforcement in recent weeks, but make no mistake, the men and women of our federal, state, and local law enforcement put their lives at risk and on the line to keep Minnesota safe. They work tirelessly, day and night, to make sure that the tragic events of Friday night ended without further violence or bloodshed. We owe them all a debt of gratitude, and they will forever have my respect and admiration. I'm going to turn it over to Special Agent Alvin Whitson from the FBI.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning. My name is Alvin Winston, and I serve as the Special Agent in charge of the FBI Minneapolis Field Office, which covers the states of Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. I want to begin by extending my deepest condolences to the families of the victims and to the community that has been shaken by this devastating act of violence. Our thoughts remain with those.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. That is a press conference out of Minnesota regarding that tragic shooting there in, again, Minnesota, involving lawmakers there, federal officials giving us updates earlier. Again, this is previously recorded, but in case you missed it, we wanted to play it back for you. All right, so we're at the bottom of the hour. It's 2:32 here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and thank you for being here, sticking with us. It's been a busy afternoon. So we want to get to another story that just came across our desk probably about an hour ago. So let me read you the headline. Purdue Pharma and Sackler's family reach new $7.4 billion opioid settlement. Now, all 50 states, as well as the District of Columbia and U.S. territories, have approved a $7.4 billion settlement with Purdue Pharma, maker of OxyContin, over the company's improper marketing of opioids. The deal was filed with the federal bankruptcy court by Purdue Pharma officials back in March after negotiations with state attorneys general and other stakeholders. And look, if this plan is finalized, payouts will occur over the next 15 years. And on the show, are we ready for this, guys?
We're working on audio now.
Okay. So I'll read a little bit more. So this settlement happened, a $7.4 billion settlement. Now, I want to read you a statement from New York's Attorney General Letitia James. She said the plan will, quote, hold the Sackler family accountable for what she described as their, quote, leading role in fueling the epidemic of opioid addiction and overdoses. So again, we are getting okay. So we have North Carolina Attorney General Jeff Jackson on the line. Do we want to step away from this and go to weather for a second? Okay, so we're going to get back to the story as we figure some things out. Let's give you another look at the forecast.
Good Monday afternoon. We are gearing up for a hot and humid day that's going to be feeling like the middle to upper 90s across much of the area. Will likely only continue to feel hotter as we head towards midweek. There is also going to be a chance for some thunderstorms, not going to be widespread. More of that hit or miss activity that we've been seeing over the past several days. We'll continue that into today. On par with that, there is an active flood watch for a couple of our counties that we'll get to in a moment. Highs today will reach the upper 80s to lower 90s across much of the metro area and middle 70s for the high country. But in the metro, when you factor in the heat and humidity, it's likely going to be feeling close to around 96, 97 for today. So that's what you're going to want to prepare for as you step outdoors today. What you can expect pretty much today going forward is scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Again, not widespread, but any downpour that does develop, and especially those slow moving ones, could dump a lot of rain, and isolated flash flooding will be possible with heat index values well above 90 degrees. Now let's talk about the heat first, as the high temperatures for today will only be a couple of degrees above that normal high for this time of year, and that's going to be combined with dew points in the lower temperatures will be in the upper 80s. Peak heat index value will reach 97 for today, 99 tomorrow, and then start to reach the triple digits by still remain hot towards the end of the work week. June is also the month where we have the strongest sun angle. It actually peaks the summer solstice, which comes on Friday, and right on par with that, our UV index is at a 10. That is a very high, and a burn time of about 15. So it's important not only to hydrate today, but sunscreen and hats, sunglasses will all be needed for much of this week ahead. Why we're so hot is that Bermuda high pressure system that I've been talking about pretty much all weekend long, driving in.
All right, so that's our forecast. We want to get back out to, again, the story before we brought you your forecast. Purdue Pharma, Sackler's family reaching a $7.4 billion opioid settlement. All 50 states, as well as District of Columbia and U.S. territories, have approved a $7.4 billion settlement with Purdue Pharma, maker of OxyContin, over the company's improper marketing opioids. And right now on the show, we have Attorney General Jeff Jackson here. Attorney General Jackson, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So what were some of the key factors that led to all 55 attorney generals agreeing to this massive settlement here?
Well, it wasn't easy. This has been many years in the making, and it gets back to the origin of the fentanyl crisis, which was the prescription pill crisis, which was OxyContin, as you said. Basically, the Sackler family owned Purdue Pharma. Purdue Pharma made OxyContin, and they lied to a bunch of doctors, and they told them that it wasn't addictive. So doctors prescribed it like wild. All these people got addicted, And it created this cycle of opioid addiction that has now led to the fentanyl crisis. So we're losing about 6 people a day in North Carolina to this crisis. It was really important that these folks be held accountable, but also that we get the money that we need to help break the cycle of addiction. So it's now up to $1.6 billion that'll be coming to North Carolina. Most of it will be hitting in the next 3 years. And the vast majority of it is going to go downstream, local communities, so that we can support programs that provide treatment and try to break the cycle of addiction.
And I was just about to ask, what assurances, I know folks are hearing this interview and they're thinking, I know you just alluded to it, but what assurances are in place that these settlement funds will reach the communities that are in need and the individuals that are most affected by this opioid crisis?
Final agreement. So this has been under negotiation for now several years. And the reason why we sent out this announcement and we're saying it's a big deal is because of the finality. We have, to your point, all 50 states now on board with this and has been agreed to by all parties. Second, the structure of the deal ensured that the money would be, first of all, most of it getting paid out within the first 3 years. So we want that money arriving as quickly as possible. And second, we wanted it structured so it didn't just go into the general fund for the state budget, but specifically designed this agreement to get the money downstream to local communities. It's built into the terms of the agreement itself. It's not up to me. It's not up to the state legislature. It's not even up to the governor. We put it into the terms of the agreement itself.
That's Attorney General Jeff Jackson there. He's here live on Live Impact News. Mr. Jackson, thank you for your time. I know you have a tight schedule, but thank you for answering a couple of our questions here on Live Impact News. All right, and that, again, is Attorney General Jeff Jackson discussing this, again, big settlement, $7.4 billion settlement with Purdue Pharma, also the Sackler family. Again, this is regarding the opioid settlement. Again, all 50 states, as well as the District of Columbia and the U.S. territories, have approved the $7.4 billion settlement with Purdue Pharma, maker of OxyContin, over the company's improper marketing of opioids. So this is so when it comes to opioids and the epidemic, the crisis here in North Carolina, this is a story that has been around, covering and being in North Carolina for the better part of a decade on and off. This has been a big story here. So there is that, and you can check out that interview shortly in case you missed it on our website, WCNC.com, and on our news app as well. All right, so let's shift gears. Let's talk a little sports. Charlotte Hornets. The NBA draft will be here before you know it, guys. It'll be here. I don't know if y'all ready.
Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Same. Look, Charlotte Hornets, they are picking, because I'm going back and forth, because we just had the NFL draft, so the Panthers picked this is going to bug me. I had this information off the top of my head.
Terrence Oak.
No, draft selection. Where are they picking this year? 4th. Yes, they're picking 4th. Mm-hmm. I knew it. I should have went with my instinct. Told you I'm in football mode right now. Mm-hmm. But the Hornets are picking 4th in the NBA draft. It's coming up. They'll be here right after the finals. Who will the Hornets select? I had hopes that they were going to get the number 1 pick, Cooper Flagg out of Duke. It didn't happen. Number 4 is still pretty good.
Yeah.
So a lot in the balance when it comes to what's next with the Hornets. Not the best year this past season. They hope to bounce back. They hope to get a guy like Brandon Miller back on the team. They hope to that it starts to click with LaMelo Ball. We don't know what the future is for a guy like Miles Bridges. We don't know what the future is for a guy like Mark Williams, who they traded to the Lakers, but the trade got rescinded, and now he's a Hornet still. So a lot of questions in the air. They can go in different directions. So you don't need me trying to figure out who the Hornets to take. WCNC Charlotte's Nick Carboni got a chance to speak with Charlotte Hornets analyst Terrence Oglesby about what the team could do with that draft pick, and explains what we could expect and if we should or can get excited about the future of the Hornets. Here's that interview.
Welcome back to the WCNC Live Impact News Studio. I'm Sports Director Nick Carboni. We are not too far from the NBA draft. Hornets have the 4th overall pick in that first round, Wednesday the 25th. And we are talking about the draft every single week leading up, getting you prepared for what the Hornets might do, should do, could do, would do. And today we have the perfect guest, Terrence Oglesby. He's perfect because he watches I can't even imagine the hours of college basketball and Hornets basketball. He is an analyst for FanDuel Sports, ESPN, Fox, NBA, CBS, and Field of 68. I don't know if you and Jeff Goodman are working on re-trademarking that to Field of 72 or 76, but that's a different conversation.
That is a whole different conversation. I hear there's some scuttlebutt, if you will, that they're working on some different names. But we'll see. We'll see how it all kind of progresses. I wouldn't be opposed to more madness. Of course, that's just me. But I think there's a lot of people saying the other way around.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the finals. Pacers take a 2-1 lead last night. Halliburton just keeps finding it. You can't put this guy down. And the Pacers, it was a cool atmosphere in Indiana. First time in 25 years of the finals. Reggie Miller, going wild for Hallie.
Elite outfit.
Yeah.
for my main man, Reg. No, look, the thing about the Indiana Pacers is everybody kind of assumed because it was the playoffs it was going to slow down, and that just hasn't been the case. And here's the thing about Indiana, too, that I think has not been talked about enough. The way they play doesn't rely on officiating, whether they're at home or they're away. So for them to be able to steal game one was huge. And the fact that Tyrese Halliburton has emerged into this superstar of a player, and then whenever he's not going, they have an individual scorer in Pascal Siakam. They have lockdown defenders that you can throw different types of bodies at SGA. Indiana, man, what a fun team. And Rick Carlisle is a genius. We all know that.
Yeah.
That's been said. But at the same time, to be able to get those guys to come together, the guys coming off the bench playing well, this Indiana team, because they don't rely on officiating and they just keep coming at you in waves, the game is never over. And we've seen that through the entirety of these playoffs.
Yeah, they're built on that. Can only help them going forward. With OKC, is their inexperience showing in those moments? I mean, they came in as you look at them and that's the deep team. That's the team that has so many options.
Yeah, absolutely right. And here's the thing too, they're still young. They're still capable. I do think because the depth plays so hard for Indiana. T.J. McConnell came in, I think in the first half had 2 points in one spell, but completely changed the tone of the game. He's done that all season long, and he has found a knack for changing the energy of a contest. And whenever you have guys that come off the bench and do that, whether it's him, whether it's Benedict Mathurin, those guys just provide a different level of spark. They don't come in to fit in. They come in to break things down and change a rhythm, and they've been able to do that all season long, and it's just carried over into the playoffs. And so I think there's one thing to be learned. They have a lot of guys that understand their role, and they have a lot of guys that are willing to break the mold, even coming in with that second unit.
All right, let's talk about the Hornets. We hope someday they play in June. May would be great as well, so they got to hit on draft picks, including number 4. So obviously the lottery luck or lack thereof kind of bit again, and fans were down about that. It's time to get over that now. And a top 4 pick is nothing to sneeze at in the NBA draft. Do you think this is a good place to be in the top 4 this draft?
Yes. I think there's 4, maybe 5 guys that I would have taken number 1 last year.
Wow.
And last year, obviously, being a bit of a down year as far as the draft is concerned. Zachary Richichet, who had some good games towards the back half of the NBA season, but at the same time, not the same level that we're accustomed to seeing. The year before, it was Wemby and all these guys. It was a down year last year. The top of this draft, not so much the case. I mean, you look at Cooper Flagg, obviously going to go number 1 to the Mavs. How that happens, I'm not quite sure. Number 2, Dylan Harper, a terrific piece, big guard with size. After that, it gets interesting because I still feel like after those top 2, which in my mind, both of those guys are going to be all-stars, you have some volatility in the 3, 4, 5, 6 picks because you can either get guys that can help you immediately, which I think would be someone in the neighborhood of a VJ Edgecombe him, or even more so, if you want to go Con-Knipple. And then you have some guys that you're looking a little bit more at future prospects. Are they going to be able to score a lot in the future? And Ace Bailey's going to be a really good player if everything clicks and he falls into the right situation. Trey Johnson, kind of in the same mold as, I'm going to say it, like he's intentional about getting to his spots. He's best in the mid-range. His jump shot is pure. And he scored almost 20 points a game in spite of playing for Coach Rodney Terry, who didn't set him up with a lot. So for him to be able to create those looks, that really impressed me. Same measure. I'm not calling him Kobe, but people keep in mind, drafted by Charlotte, what was it, 12th?
Yeah.
He was drafted way back, as opposed to now you're looking at the 3, 4, 5 pick. Like, I think I'm prone to hyperbole, sure. However, Trey Johnson can really score the basketball, but there are going to be bumps in the road with him and Ace, to where if you want somebody who can help you sooner to play alongside LaMelo, play alongside Brandon Miller, maybe VJ or Con-Knipple is the guy.
Yeah, and comparing this year's class to last year's, it seemed like last year's was the perfect time for the Hornets to do what they did and say, like, let's just take the flyer on the 18-year-old from France. This year, maybe they get somebody that will be more NBA ready a little bit sooner. So Cooper Flagg, no. Dylan Harper, no. I mean, you think he's going to no matter what, whether it's Spurs or somebody
that's pretty
that
much
trades
the
up.
consensus at this point. So those top two, those are the guys, and then after that, that's where it gets interesting. Does Philly move their pick?
Let's talk Ace Bailey. You mentioned if it all. Sure. And I think that's, I feel like people are kind of, you hear a lot more negative things right now because people are, the shot selection, all of this stuff. Like, do you buy into that? Do you think that there's, would he be a fit on the Hornets?
Look, at worst, he's going to be a really good jump shooter, be able to play the 4 position for you. If he wants to put effort on the defensive end, should be able to do that. Charles Lee has shown the ability to get guys to play defense throughout 82 games, even when playoffs were long and lost. So I do think it could work. His best basketball is 5 years away.
Okay.
That's kind of the biggest difference. But keep in mind, too, this guy, he was listed at 6'10", measured at 6'7.5 at the combine, red flag number 1. But really past that, you're looking at a guy that could lead the league in scoring. I think he's that good. Real Tracy McGrady comparisons and likeness as far as the size is concerned, his ability to create in the mid-range, and really the sound footwork and how he shoots the 3 ball, at worst projects as somebody as like a Rashard Lewis, who played for the Orlando Magic alongside Dwight Howard, was able to space the floor. So you look at guys like that, and who have size, who has that defensive versatility, at least in the future, as a guy that could play well beside LaMelo Ball, play well beside Brandon Miller, beside Miles Bridges, and fit kind of a need on this Hornets roster.
So a guy that may play his best basketball 5 years from now, and if his best basketball could be leading the league in scoring, given that the Hornets drafted on distant potential last year, could that still fit kind of this team's trajectory right now to pick somebody that is going to take a handful of years to achieve that potential?
I think there's a lot to be made from what the Charlotte Hornets front office is going to do with this draft.
Yeah.
Because if you go somewhere with, say you take VJ Edgecombe, who, hypothetically speaking, fits alongside LaMelo and Brandon, or Con-Knipple, who could slide in and play a role right away and has a very professional way of being. That means you're hitching your wagon to the LaMelo Ball train, and we're going to see where this thing takes us. If you go more of a future play, Trey Johnson, Ace Bailey, what does that say as far as like, hey, is it going to be right now, or is it going to be in 5 years? One thing, the Hornets always catch flack at this time of the year because of basically, and I'm just going to say it, how Jordan kind of ran this thing. It's a new regime. They are looking for different things. They are looking for the long-term play, and you've seen it with their gathering of assets and future draft capital and what they have been intentional about doing. It's a future play. So what do you do in this draft? That's the biggest question for me. I don't have access to the front office like a lot of people might think I do. I'm just an outsider.
That's why we brought you. Wait,
Yeah.
Whoa.
I'm just
an outsider these guys looking on speed dial.
Yeah. I'm just an outsider looking in. I can't wait to see kind of the direction they take during this draft because, like I said, 4, maybe 5 guys that you would have taken number 1 overall last year. The talent's certainly there.
Yeah, it seems like obviously Flagg, Harper are the most well-rounded. Like they're rookies, but 4 rookies, maybe not a lot of holes in their game as prospects. It seems like everybody in that 3 through 6 has like, they do this really well, this may be 2 years away.
Sure.
VJ Edgecombe right now seems to be everybody's, shiny toy that the Hornets should be in range for, although we'll see. I mean, he could go at 3, it seems like now. What are your thoughts on him overall as a prospect? And obviously, with his game as it stands right now, certainly fits in with this team.
One of the best direct line athletes that the NBA will have next year. That's how good of an athlete he is. Played with the Bahamian national team. Was forced to play a role with some NBA guys. DeAndre Ayton was on that team. Eric Gordon. There were a couple of others. So understands that, hey, I can slide in and play a role. I don't have to be the guy. Has all to be able to be that guy. He's an elite defender. He does some things on the defensive end of the floor that normal humans have no business even being in the play for. So that quickness and that burst help him get in the passing lanes, help him create some fast break opportunities, turning defense into offense. But then, there's a couple of things that as I watch VJ play, it kind of stuck out. I'm not sure he changes direction as well as he is a straight ahead guy. Like he could be a dunk contest guy next year. Like that's the kind of athlete he is. But there were times during Big 12 play this season where if he had to change directions or a guy beat him to a spot, he really tried to put his shoulder down and bully the guy to the rim. You got to be able to change directions at the NBA level because guys don't just budge like that. So a little bit of a cause for concern, not a huge one, but you look at if he's drafted at 4, how he could play immediately and be slotted in immediately. Yeah. You move Brandon to the 3, and then all of a sudden, like you look at the defensive potential, given that everybody's healthy, it changes things.
Is it hyperbolic to say that VJ Edgecombe could be the best defender on the Hornets at some point in his rookie season? Or is there too much to learn about team defense, about what Charles Lee wants to do, and maybe somebody else that's on this team? It's been a problem in the past, but it certainly improved last year.
It depends on what you say, as far as being a defender, because there's so many different pieces and aspects of that right now. I think Mark Williams, when healthy and engaged, is a terrific defender, especially around the rim, when engaged.
Yeah.
I'm going up and down the roster right now as far as defense is concerned. As far as an individual defender, yes, I do think he could be that guy. Off the ball, I think he could really be that guy because you see what Lou Dort's been able to do. He's big and broad, so it's a little bit different. But just being able to disrupt one side of the floor, I think his quickness and his burst will definitely put him in that kind of category. And it also, it's going to lead itself to a lot of exciting play. And you think back a few years to how they played whenever they made the play-in, fast, out in the passing lanes, getting up and down the floor. VJ could help do that while also maintaining some sound principles that Charles Lee has coached a little bit more so.
Con Knippel, do you think he's in play for the Hornets?
I do. Yeah. I do. And if nothing else, would he shoot 44% from 3 last year? 41% from 3. I think his catch and shoots were much higher than that. He's not a great athlete. But then again, it goes back to, are you going to pick for ceiling or are you going to pick for floor? That floor is pretty high for Con Knippel. Not a great athlete, not going to dunk on you. But what he is capable of doing, and I had a couple of Duke games for ESPN last year, is he can spotlight at the point for you. He's a terrific reader of the game when he comes off ball screens. He can find open guys, and he could give you a little bit of a change of pace from what LaMelo is if you need a secondary ball handler to get Brandon to his spots. So I absolutely think he's in play. That is an upside as opposed to a baseline pick. And I think Con Knippel's going to play in the NBA for a long time because knockdown shooters right away and a guy who makes good decisions, who's competitive, who's a professional, those guys stick. Yeah.
We'll make sure we put a headline out that says Oglesby says Trey Johnson is the next Kobe Bryant. But
we'll do that.
Let's dive. I promise you we won't do that. Let's dive into him a little bit because I thought what you said about him is very intriguing because you see a range on him in the mock drafts for whatever those are worth from all the way to 4 to 6, 7, 8, maybe back end of the top 10. I think you said, he may have some bumps in the road as a lot of these guys will, but how would he kind of slot in immediately? And, we had this conversation a couple of years ago before they picked Brandon Miller about Scoot Henderson and LaMelo and how would that all work?
By the way, right pick.
Yeah, I think we can all say that now for sure. Trey Johnson and LaMelo, how do you see that dynamic playing out?
At worst, you have another shot creator on the floor. Trey Johnson, to me, 19.9 points per game, shot right at 40%, like 39.7, something like this. And he, he's 6'6". The person I saw this I was driving on the way up here, and they're like, he has the exact same measurements as James Bouknight. Completely different. Completely different.
Let's go the Kobe route.
Yeah. Completely different human being.
Yeah.
First and foremost. So I don't think that's a good comparison whatsoever. The reason I said Kobe Bryant is because Kobe was so intentional about the spots he was going to get to on the floor to get the shot that he wanted every single time down. Trey's much like that. As you were able to see, if you go back and watch his film, loves a 15-footer on the right baseline. He made sure he could get to that spot to knock down that shot. As the season went on, understood that guys were going to close out hard on him because he turned into a plus shooter, turned his floater into a weapon towards the back end of the season. And he shot 40% from three, the majority of those off the bounce. And it wasn't like he was set up for like these easy looks.
Right.
You put him beside LaMelo, who's a savant as far as passing the ball, and he's going to be able to score sooner rather than later. Now, you are going to have to live with some of these bumps in the road as far as shot selection is concerned, because guys aren't patient, especially when it comes to things like that. Guys are not patient when it comes to shot selection, bad shots, because you take a bad shot, you're taking a good shot out of my hands if I'm a veteran. I've been here long enough. Like, I don't want to see that, right?
Yep.
So you're going to have to live with some of those things. The flip side of that is he's smart, high-character individual. He's going to be a professional. He's been a professional scorer in college for the last X amount of years. And from all intents and purposes, the people I've talked to, he's a professional in how he goes about his business. So I'm a big believer in Trey Johnson. I think he's going to be a really good NBA player. I think he could end up leading the league in scoring. I think he's that good.
Wow.
It's just a matter of time, and if it's a matter of patience. And a lot of that comes down to, as you know, fit. Is he going to get that kind of opportunity? I think he is a gifted player.
I think a lot of people like to put, words or thoughts in LaMelo's mouth and head about, well, he doesn't want to be here, or he doesn't want to play with somebody else that needs the ball. I think anybody who's watched
LaMelo
him,
lived in Lithuania. He's good with Charlotte. I can promise you. I spent some time in Lithuania too. Beautiful country, but if you're not used to a certain way of living, not great for some people.
All right, Terrence, I'll wrap it up with this. We've watched, look at the NBA Finals, Oklahoma City and Indiana, and how they got there. This is a unique market to try to build what ownership wants to build, and that's their stated goal of premier franchise in the NBA. From the limited sample size we have from Jeff Peterson running the show over there, do you think there's a specific path he sees elsewhere in the NBA that he's trying to follow a little bit? Do you see signs of any other franchise out there?
I think, you alluded to Oklahoma City. I think that was before we started the show.
Yeah. Building assets.
Yeah, building assets, building draft capital, looking 2, 3, 4 years into the future. And you don't just see it from the basketball side of things with Jeff Peterson and Charles Lee. You also see it from the front office and the new owners and these guys building a practice facility right across the street, upgrading the facility in which they play in. This is very much a project pushed out into the future. If I'm a Charlotte Hornets fan, I'm excited about the future, while also understanding like a good NBA franchise, a sustainable NBA franchise, isn't built in 1 or 2 years. It is heading in the right direction. Schnall, all these guys, Rick Schnall,
All right, so there you hear it. A chat between our Nick Carboni and Hornets analyst Terrence Oglesby. Preview of the NBA draft. Don't forget, Nick is going to be getting us ready for the draft over the next few days. Tune in on Thursday here on WCNC Plus. He'll have at 9 p.m. for us yet another interview, once again getting us ready for the draft. And then mark your calendars for Wednesday next week. That's when we're going to have our draft special starting at 8 o'clock. So, of course, more on that to come. Meantime, you're watching here live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Vanessa Rufus taking over for Nick Sturdivant. We have a really important topic to talk about here this hour, and that is Helene recovery. And we're pleased to be joined right now by Lake Lure Mayor Carol Pritchett because there's a lot to mention about what's open in Lake Lure, how folks can go and support the town. But also, we really got to talk about the ongoing recovery efforts because it is a process even all these months later. So, Carol, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
You're certainly welcome. I'm delighted to be here, Vanessa.
So let's start off with Lake Lure. How is the town doing? What's open? I've seen you've put some events on the calendar for this month and beyond, so it sounds like y'all are welcoming folks right now to come and visit.
We absolutely are. That's absolutely true. Lake Lure, the town of Lake Lure is absolutely open and thriving, and we're so grateful for all the progress that has been made. And so many things are ready to receive visitors. The one thing that we're not able to open right now is the actual lake itself. We're in the process, which is wonderful. Army Corps of Engineers is been in the process since actually October of removing all of the sedimentation and subsurface and surface debris from Lake Lure, but that will continue through the summer. And until we have removed all of that, the lake cannot be open for visitors. But other than that, that's just one part of what is available in Lake Lure. The trails are open, which are beautiful. We have 2 18-hole golf courses that are open in Rumbling Ball. Morse Park is partially open. Our own Public Works Department has redone that. The gazebo, where so many weddings have taken place over the last decades, are open. All of our hotels and restaurants are open, so we absolutely welcome everyone here. Of course, there is a little 6474 is open only to locals through Chimney Rock now, but we're just 13 miles off 26, so you can certainly access us by 26 or coming up 6474, and we welcome everyone coming here.
Now, I mean, you mentioned the fact that unfortunately you can't have the lake open yet for folks. This has been a really extensive, I guess, dredging, cleaning up process when it comes to the work. I saw the Army Corps of Engineers has been helping with that. And I've just kind of been blown away in general as we start to see the numbers reported from a statewide basis, both North and South Carolina with Helene recovery. The amount of debris that's been collected over the last several months related to this storm has been absolutely spectacular to think of. But I mean, that's a lot of work. And I mean, how much have you gotten actually out of the lake where you are right now?
Well, you know, it absolutely is remarkable. This is so far, and just in the last week, I'll give you those stats just for the last week. 376,000 tons of silt and sediment was removed. 46,744 cubic yards of debris from the waterway was removed. That is the largest amount of silt and sedimentation removed in 1 week so far. That's enough to fill 25 Olympic swimming pools. Wow. So it's an incredible endeavor, and just the Army Corps has been our partner and really our savior in all of this. They're working 24/7, literally. You know, sometimes when you're on the roads, when you come in, you may be a little delayed because there are trucks that are taking the debris and sedimentation out of the town. But I just ask you to bear with us on that, because every truck that you see that may slow you down just a little bit means one more truckload of sedimentation that's not in Lake Lure. So it's just an amazing effort, but there is a huge amount, as you said, of sedimentation and subsurface debris, and it probably will continue at least until this fall.
Wow, that's unfortunate to hear in the sense, you know, we know that folks love the lake, and but I mean, just incredible progress thus far. You know,
well, it is, and you know, this will restore to the lake to its natural beauty and usability and safety. So yes, Helene was a disaster for everyone and certainly impacted people in different ways. We're so lucky in Lake Lure, of course, not to have any loss of life, but what's being done to the lake now will preserve it for generations to come.
Recently, we spoke with the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce, and, you know, we heard similar messaging from them as far as, you know, we're open for business, come visit us. But we also heard something a bit more dire from the CEO and president there of the Chamber of Commerce, and he was speaking on the fact that we need people, not just we're welcoming people, we need people. He seemed pretty concerned that, you know, that stat that we sometimes hear thrown out after natural disasters, the fact that 40% of small businesses don't reopen following a major natural disaster. He seemed to be concerned that that might come to fruition. What are you hearing from your small businesses in that area? Are they feeling as dire of a situation? And if so, what can folks do to help?
Well, you know, of course, our economies are all mainly based on tourism. Certainly in Lake Lure it is. However, the tourism, our product for tourism here is the natural beauty of Lake Lure. Yes, certainly predominantly lake, but also the mountains, the trails, the parks, the golf courses, all those different things. So we don't have many merchandise stores here. So in a sense, that's really better because you can focus on more than one thing. Though you may not be able to access the lake right now, you certainly can access all the other things that we have available. It is very difficult for small business owners because we all know that small business owners have just a certain amount of capital reserves and really can't afford to go too long with no revenue coming in. And that is one reason that it is so important for us to encourage people to come and enjoy all the things in Lake Lure. As an example, we'll be having our usual 4th of July celebrations on both the 3rd and the 4th, one in Rumbling Bald and one on the beach here. We are having many celebrations like that. So I encourage everyone to come. It is, certainly we need to give all the help we can to our small business owners to help them live through this until we have Lake Lure back to its pristine beauty.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things as well that I think about with Lake Lure, and this just comes from, being a animal shelter volunteer, so I have a lot of colleagues, in my volunteer work who are also big animal lovers, but that was the Rainbow Bridge that was out there where everyone would bring their dog collars after their furry friend had passed away and crossed the Rainbow Bridge,
Right.
and that got destroyed during Helene. But I understand that y'all have tried to get that back up and running, and maybe there were some ways to salvage, some of that bridge. Is that back in place for folks?
We are, we're working on that right now. That's a work in progress. Certainly, we're working with FEMA to get funding for that, certainly. But we are trying to preserve whatever parts of the bridge. It's not usable and it will have to be demolished. But we would like to preserve parts of it if we can as a memorial to all the wonderful things that have happened on that bridge in the past. So that's certainly part of our plan moving forward.
Yeah. So you just mentioned FEMA. From my understanding, you recently touched base with FEMA again. You had a recent meeting in the past couple of days with FEMA. How is the work going on with FEMA? Because I know we're transitioning since Helene first happened to a different administration over FEMA. And so some things have kind of transitioned, it sounds like, as far as, perhaps how FEMA might be operating going forward following the hurricane season. How was that transition for y'all? Do you feel like you're still getting what you need from federal agencies? And I guess, we'll keep it there with that question for now.
Yeah, our personal interaction with everyone from FEMA has just been very productive, and they're certainly very knowledgeable and certainly trying to help us. It's not a problem with the individual, so we've had a great partnership there, but it is an extremely slow process. We've received so far just $2.1 million in funding, and that is actually for money that we spent out of the town's bank accounts, so to speak, in the first 3 weeks to do emergency work. And so that's really a refund. But as far as getting any obligation from FEMA for projects that we have moving forward, that is a very, very slow process, I'll be honest with you. I think that, there is certainly a collaboration between FEMA and the state, and I know both parties are working very hard with that. It is difficult because our town just has an annual budget of $9 million. So we look at probably 50% of our revenues being lost for this year because of the lake and the marina. And when we had to expend, $2.1 million of our own money, which is understandable, we use local contractors and we're so thankful for them, but they need to be paid immediately. So that puts all small municipalities, not just Lake Lure, in a very difficult position. We're very fortunate going into this. We've had a very prudent town manager and financial officer, and we were in good financial shape prior to the hurricane, so that's good for us. But it is a slow process, and it is something, however FEMA is restructured or reorganized, that is something I think that needs to be focused on, and that is how to expedite the process of getting funding to the municipalities.
I mean, and as far as, speaking on how things could be improved on that front, I was also curious how things were going as far as, some of the relief funding that we've seen discussed on the state level. Of course, we've also seen similar discussions on the federal level as well. And we heard, once again, we spoke with the Boone Area Chamber last week, and the CEO and president flat out said, y'all need to take this Helene recovery out of the budget because the budget talks are going slow, and he seemed to feel like it was holding up the Helene recovery for so many folks. And so, I mean, I'm just curious to hear how your discussions might be going with representatives about, getting the help that you need from a state level, perhaps.
Well, the state is certainly very involved in it. And, of course, FEMA now was 100% funded by FEMA. Now it's 90% for the federal government and 10% for the state. So certainly General Assembly, and the Senate, they're looking to see where to find that money. And there certainly is, there is a difference in whether it's in the budget, which can make it certainly a slower process as compared to, the Senate, which has a separate way to fund the money. So, I think the state, I will tell you, I've heard so much discussion about all of these processes, disaster recovery funding should be handled by the state. And I don't disagree that many times the state knows better because they're closer to the disaster, closer to the municipality, may know better what funding is more necessary than others. But, that is a large department to develop, and one that I think the state is focusing on now moving forward. Grow North Carolina certainly has been implemented by Governor Stein, and they're working on trying to make sure that funding gets to the municipalities. So, it is a very slow process. FEMA has always been a very slow process, and I certainly do believe that there are things that need to be done to expedite that.
I'm just curious your thoughts as you reflect back on the last several months now of the storm and then the recovery that followed. What have you learned about your town, about the folks in your community in the wake of the storm?
Well, I'll tell you, it's just been remarkable. They always say disasters bring out the best and the worst of everyone, and that's probably true. But I think that, the amount of resilience and compassion and loyalty to the town has just been remarkable. We have not, so many people have said, is everybody leaving? Or no, people are not. They're here for the long run. They are willing to dig in, do whatever they need to do to adapt to the difficult situations right now. And, most of the residents here, everybody's had to make accommodations, from the business owners to the residents. But I think, the ability to look into the future, look at the long term, and realize that this is something that just takes a while to fix. And to be patient with it and to recognize that, we're all inconvenienced by it, to be honest with you. So I think, one of the things that there are a lot of people in Lake Lure who are retired. We're getting lots of new younger people moving in, which is marvelous and always a real shot in the arm to any community. But a lot of the people here have been through hard times before, and I think that they appreciate more what it takes to just be resilient, stand shoulder to shoulder with the people in your community, and just work out the things that need to be done. So I couldn't have more admiration for the community here. Certainly, just a tremendous amount of respect for our emergency management crew, both the fire and the police, who've just been amazing in all this. And all of the people who work for the town of Lake Lure here have just really worked together and addressed a disaster, that they were unprepared to address, because not that we did not have a good emergency management plan, we did, but you can only make a plan for what you envision might possibly happen. So we learn from this. We recover from this disaster, and we move forward knowing more about what we need to do next time.
How do you feel about us being in hurricane season now? I mean, is that kind of filtered your, the Helene experience, has that filtered your thoughts on hurricane season as we are in it right now, and how y'all have prepared for this season? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. We actually had a meeting 2 weeks ago to redo our emergency plan. And, looking at everything, taking everything into consideration, the emergency plan that we had before, and DEQ was a part of that. Our emergency management people were a part of that. People from the county and the state were a part of that. So you always have to look at how can we improve. I lived the majority of my life in the Gulf Coast, in Texas, Louisiana, until 2011. So I've lived through almost every hurricane that's occurred, to be honest with you, right in the middle of it. And I'll tell you, another hurricane will come. It may not be exactly like this one. This was certainly an unusual situation, but another hurricane will come, and we need to be prepared for it. So we're focusing on that at the same time that we focus on recovering from this community. How can we be better next time? How can we protect our town better than we did last time?
Mayor, is there anything else you'd like to leave our viewers with here on Live Impact News about the situation, about the recovery, about coming to visit, whatever you wish to say to our viewers?
Well, everybody always says, what do you need now? And we're so thankful for all the help that we have gotten and just from so many different sources. If there was one thing that people could do to help now, it would be to come and enjoy Lake Lure. Close your eyes to the things that there are some things that you may see the lake can't be your use, certainly, and you'll see Army Corps out there just working tirelessly to bring the lake back to its beauty. But come and help make it able for all the people who live in Lake Lure and who have businesses here to survive this in an economic way. So if you could do one thing for us, come and visit us and enjoy what's here for Lake Lure now.
All right. Lake Lure Mayor Carol Pritchett, thank you so much for your time here, and we hope to have you back on. Let us know if you have any big updates that you'd like to share with our viewers here on Live Impact News.
I absolutely do that. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure, truly.
Absolutely. All right, we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Well, folks, here on Live Impact News, of course, we will continue to have the conversation about Hurricane Helene recovery. As we, just illustrated there with our chat with the Lake Lure mayor, this is an ongoing effort. And unfortunately, in some situations, we might be, for some communities, talking about recovery for the very least several months down the road, if not maybe years. Hopefully it's not that long, but you heard it from the Lake Lure mayor, and of course, as we mentioned with our chat last week with the Boone Area Chamber of Commerce, really just all the communities up in the high country at this point are saying, come on back, come visit our businesses, come visit what's open. There is a lot open, and help us weather the aftermaths of this storm. All right, we want to turn to another big headline for us today. In recent weeks, we've been talking a lot about the city of Charlotte, this ongoing saga with the CMPD chief settlement. We're learning some new information that kind of bubbled up, if you will, throughout the process of investigating some of the chief's particulars when it comes to payments. Art Name Morabito has been doing some great investigative legwork on that, requesting documents and requesting, responses from folks. So, Nate, you've got some new information for us. And this is regarding, this sounds like moving expenses that were paid to the chief. Now, this wasn't recent, right? This was when he basically became the chief, correct?
Yeah, they're labeled moving expenses. And what struck me as I started digging into this and saw some pay stubs I requested, and I'll tell you why I requested them in a minute, but the bottom line is that pay stubs show that in 2020, after the city manager named him as the new chief, Johnny Jennings, the city of Charlotte paid him $77,000 to relocate to the city of Charlotte. He was living fairly close by in a neighboring county. The job posting for the chief job said that you have to live in the city of Charlotte. And there were basically two payments. One shortly after he was named the new chief, before he was sworn in, and then another one after he was sworn in. Fairly sizable. And I don't know how often you've moved. I assume quite often because of the business we're
news.
in.
Yeah, correct.
And I have too. And I mean, I've never heard of a moving expense even close to that.
I mean, this is like a salary for somebody, or maybe two salaries for a person, depending on their role.
And I would have maybe never looked into this had the whole settlement between him and the city happened in the first place. You remember he settled. At first, it was behind closed doors for, we now know, $305,000. He was frustrated by what he felt was an attack by a former city council member against him over his stance at the time on outer carrier vests. And we later learned from the chief himself, he disclosed what the settlement was. That was $305,000. And in the aftermath of that, I was reporting on how his pension would balloon because of these extra payments. Like when he retires for the rest of his life, he's going to get at least an extra $9,000 a year. But through that reporting, I requested his personnel file, which is fairly standard. I mean, that's something I do with a lot of people. And in it, I noticed the year by year how much he was paid. And I noticed in 2020, his pay was like $270,000. He made $279,000 last year. Okay, so he jumped to $270,000. And then I saw in 2021, 2022, and 2023, it was less than $270,000. So I'm like, well, what else is going on here? What other payments did he potentially receive? And there's personnel laws, so the city feels limited in what it can release to us. So I said, well, I'd like to request every pay stub for 2020. And as I was reviewing those pay stubs, I noticed two in particular. One from May 2020, one from August 2020. And I have them right here. The first one from May was for $43,000 for taxable moving expenses.
Mm-hmm.
The second one from August was for $33,000, almost $34,000, also for taxable moving expenses. So you have this $305,000 settlement already. You have a pension that's partially taxpayer funded that's increasing now because of this. And then you have, in his hiring, a $77,000 combined payment for moving expenses. And I know the public's going to be frustrated about this. I think there's a lot of questions that we all need to be asking about this. This seems unusual. I've asked the city of Charlotte to provide, number one, their policy on relocation, but also to justify this. And my deadline was 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock has come and gone, and I've not heard back yet. I'm just checking just to make sure that they haven't emailed me since. So we interviewed the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, who I know you all have talked with before.
Mm-hmm.
We interviewed them earlier today, actually, and they're like the same thing you said, Vanessa. Some people's income is $77,000. And this isn't a cross-country move. This is, one county over. And it all goes back to the city, the way the city government operates, right? We can easily say, well, this chief is just taking taxpayer money. But the thing is, somebody approved giving him this money. And I think that's where our questions need to start, quite honestly. The city manager is who hires department heads. And that's why we want to know from the city manager, how does he justify this? It's just unlike anything I've ever heard of. And it's just like these breadcrumbs keep popping up about this whole situation. There were major concerns about transparency, and then the amount of the payment, and now throw another $77,000 on top of that from 5 years ago. It's eye-popping.
Well, and you talked about the fact, and, as we've tried to dive into the settlement, we've come up with the fact that, with personnel matters, as you just mentioned, it can be difficult to get the full picture because there's some protections with that. Do we know if this would have been the type of item or decision that would have happened in the public eye? For example, when you go to a city council meeting, you can see officials talk about a lot and before your very eyes. You can hear them talk about dollars and cents, but in some cases, there can be closed-door sessions where things get discussed that the public can't hear. So do you know if this would have ever been discussed openly, or if this would probably have been
Yeah, I can't imagine.
It's tough to say, I know.
I can't imagine it would. This is, the city council holds public business. The city council, they are the boss of the city manager, and that's it. The city manager is the boss of everyone else. And so when you're talking about department heads, like the chief of police, this goes through a massive hiring process. They have tons of candidates. I went back and listened to the 2020 introduction of Chief Jennings from Marcus Jones. They had tons of candidates to choose from. They picked him. Mm-hmm. And what you'll hear from the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, who is being very critical of this payment, as they have of other things. No one is saying that cities and employers shouldn't assume some of the cost of helping someone move. That's standard, especially when you're incentivizing trying to hire the best people. What I don't suspect happens in the public light is these negotiations between, a new employee and the hiring manager, of saying, well, here's what I think would be fair, here's what I can do for you. And that's, when we're contract employees, we negotiate all the time, right? I never tell anybody what my negotiations are like. And in the public sector, because personnel laws are so strict, you really can't find out that much. I asked them why did he get so much more money in 2020? And there were no records to explain that, essentially. So I had to ask for every pay stub to even find that out. And I think that that's what's really interesting here, is that if we want to make our government question and second guess their decisions, and maybe they still are the right decisions, we need to really put the pressure on them. And one of my favorite stories is when I was in Tennessee. I was in Tennessee for a long time. After I left, I had heard stories about how, different agencies or governing bodies considered doing things and said, well, what if Nate Morabito finds out? And that's the way it should be for everything. What if the public finds out? What if John Q. Public finds out about this, not just the media? So again, it's just more questions on the city of Charlotte that I don't know they're going to answer because of the personnel laws, but we all should be asking them, why are we doing this? And how, another thing I'm wondering, how often is this kind of thing happening for department heads? I'm already planning other public records requests. How many moving expenses have been issued in the last 5 years, and to who?
So, in light of no response yet from the city by your imposed deadline, what comes next? How do we try to get answers? Is there state auditor? I know they've looked, they've stepped in previously here with this ongoing saga.
Yeah, so number one, I shared the link to our web article, which is live now with the state auditor as soon as it went live. And I've asked for any comment they may have. That was a short time ago, so we'll see. Our story's going to air on TV at 6 o'clock. We'll see if anybody says anything between now and then. There is a city council meeting tonight, so I would imagine there will be chatter in the chamber about this. Now, I don't know that it'll spill over into the public side of it. There's a zoning meeting. But I would suspect that members of the public will start asking questions about what's happening here. And I don't know if the auditor is going to take this into consideration of all payments, but what the Taxpayers Protection Alliance told me, this seems to be a pattern of, at least in this particular case, paying one particular employee a significant amount of money over a long time period, and not just basic pay. And I think that, there will be additional questions about that. When we still didn't know the terms of the agreement for a settlement, which included his retirement in January, by the way, there were some accusations of, well, this man is friends with the city manager and the mayor, and that's why they're kind of giving him this much money, which the mayor and some city council members dispelled fairly quickly. But now we have another large payment that people are going to say, why him? This is an internal candidate, too. This isn't somebody, they were going, from California trying to attract to come to Charlotte. This is a person who lived not too far away from the city that he spent his whole career working in. Something like 30 years? Is that what we said? I believe it was his whole career, but he's been a long-time employee. And so now we're paying this much money to move him. But all-star employees can demand, all-star treatment. And I don't know if that happened in this case. I don't know that we're going to find out what happened in this case. But either way, the records are what the records are. And they're very clearly telling me that in that year, his pay increased substantially, in part because of $77,000 worth of moving expenses.
Really, really interesting stuff. Okay, so to be continued, perhaps. And I feel like we pointed this out when we started our back and forth here, our chat, that this came up as you were looking into the settlement. So, are there any other documents that you're still yet to go? I imagine you got a lot.
Unfortunately, the city doesn't always and hasn't always quickly responded to public records requests. I have several. You never know if there's going to be a story there or not, but that's why we ask. Sometimes it's just to make sure that every box is checked. But other times, it seemed odd to me in that year that there was so much money paid to him. So I figured there was something that happened there. I didn't know if it was a signing bonus or what. But yeah, there's tons of other records still out there. Just when you think this story is over, it's not. And then the Fraternal Order of Police was going to have this vote of no confidence against him. They ended up not getting enough support to even really have a vote that mattered. So I don't know if they've simply just moved on because he's moving on too. But I can imagine, because he has worked for a long time in Charlotte, and I've interviewed him, in fact, very early on after he was named chief. He has said, he's really working to improve the city and to leave a lasting legacy of all the good he helped try to do. And we can only imagine that all of this news continues to put a little tarnish on that, and who should be the one answering for it? Generally it would be the people that are signing the checks.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point, I mean, not that this is, the documents that you have now that you're looking at are necessarily condemning anyone. It's just we don't know what the real answer is. We don't know what the justification, to your point, is of why this happened, and it's really why we're asking, not to condemn anyone, just to get to the bottom of what's going on here, as the public deserves to know.
And are they following their policy? I don't know tax law. What is the tax law on this? I don't know. I mean, these are all questions that hopefully, as the public consumes this information, maybe people who have knowledge can shed some more light on it. But I think the policy, number one, is the city's policy allow for these kind of payments? I mean, that's interesting. Are they following their own policy? How high or low can a moving expense be? I don't know that there's a set in stone situation there, but the public should know about this. This is their money.
Yeah.
And they should have a say. And they're getting a say now, but it's 5 years later. But again, you got to be engaged. You got to go to City Hall, and it's very hard to do with busy and hectic schedules. I mean, I don't blame people at all. But the more we can kind of reveal, I think the more fire that is fueled to continue asking questions from the public's perspective too, not just us.
All right. So when can folks see your piece tonight, your update tonight?
Yep. Number one, you can go to WCNC.com and see the web article right now. And then our story, I'll join you guys in the studio at 6 o'clock tonight.
All right. And once again, as this story develops, come on by, Nate. Give us updates here in the Live Impact News studio. Who knows?
Never know what's going to be next.
Knows?
It's wild. I'd never anticipated this would be the story that would be next.
Yeah. I think a lot of folks are just, staying tuned because, to your point, it has been kind of a twist and turn as we go situation.
For sure.
All right, Nate, thank you so much,
Appreciate
as always, for joining us here in the Live Impact News studio.
You know it.
Folks, we are, just to kind of give you a heads up on what we're watching here, we are expecting momentarily an update out of Clearwater, Florida. That's the Tampa Bay area for folks who are familiar. This is a news conference with police regarding an overnight incident. There was apparently a man who opened fire on a police substation on Clearwater Beach. No injuries reported. The suspect's in custody. You're getting an early look at the podium right now. We can see no one is at the podium quite yet, but authorities actually just walked up to the two poster boards that you see, and they turned them over. So now it looks like we might have a photo, a mugshot, we're not quite sure, of a gentleman, and it looks like there might be a zoomed-in picture of a police car. It's kind of hard to see, but there might be question mark, bullet hole? A bullet hole? Jeb, are you seeing it better?
Yeah, you can kind of see some red circles there and some arrows pointing to where indentations from a bullet hole may be.
Okay. So there we have it. So yeah, we expect this coming momentarily. But good news is, as we kind of just mentioned here, no injuries reported, but certainly a scary situation, and police telling us that a suspect in custody. We don't know if the photo of the gentleman we're seeing is that person in custody, or if there is someone else that they're looking into that might be of interest to this case. So we're going to wait and see. Of course, that information is supposed to be coming to us shortly. But in the meantime, we've got for you a look at our weather impacts. Of course, always important to stay up to date with the very latest on the forecast, because you never know when rain can impact things, when the heat, if you got a lot of outdoor activities, you got to account for that. So let's listen into what we can keep our eye out for.
Good Monday afternoon. We are gearing up for a hot and humid day that's going to be feeling like the middle to upper 90s across much of the area. Will likely only continue to feel hotter as we head towards midweek. There is also going to be a chance for some thunderstorms, not going to be.
All right, well, that was just a quick teaser. We'll just remind you, 4 o'clock, as the news turns over here to the 4 o'clock news, we'll have the very latest forecast. We want to switch gears back, though, to the Clearwater Police update on the substation shooting overnight. They have begun speaking. Let's listen in.
On our beach substation. The officers inside heard the gunfire
and went outside to try and locate the source. As they did so, they saw a suspect vehicle leaving the scene, and about 2 minutes later, we got a 911 call, and it was a suspect taking responsibility for shooting at our building and police cars. Tampa Bomb Squad ended up having to come to the scene because of some evidence at the scene and some unique circumstances out there. They swept the vehicle and did not find any indications of explosive materials. The suspect is 25-year-old Gamaliel Reyes. He's got ties to Lakeland and Zephyr Hills, and most recently, very recently, has spent some time in Clearwater. The charges from this incident are the following: shooting into a building, shooting into an unoccupied vehicle, discharging a firearm from a vehicle within 1,000 feet of a person, use of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and felony criminal mischief. The motive in this thing is unknown. Despite having called 911, he's not talking to us anymore. So we've really got no idea what motivated him. So detectives are interviewing family members and looking into all aspects of his background to try and ascertain what compelled him to do this. I think it's important that we identify that piece simply because we don't know if there was some outside influence. We don't know if there was another person involved. We're just unsure as to why or what compelled him to shoot up our substation and vehicles. Regardless of motive, and thankfully, we didn't have any officers sitting in that vehicle at that moment. Quite frequently, they'll pull into the substation park.
Bear with us, folks. We are going to work on this feed. Just a quick recap here. So if you're just joining us here on Live Impact News, this is a police briefing happening out of Clearwater, Florida. That's the Tampa Bay area. Looks like they're seeking a man in his 20s related to shooting into a police substation and apparently a police cruiser overnight. I think the feed's back. I see the guy talking. All right, let's send you back there now for more updates.
And some closure on a significant response we had last night. Despite the fact that Mr. Reyes has only been here for a few days, I want to provide our tip number in the event anyone's in contact with him. It's 727-562-4242. I'll be glad to answer a couple questions. I don't really want to get in the weeds on this thing simply because there's a lot we don't know yet because, again, we're working through the evidence at the scene. We have evidence that corroborates his 911 call and the shooting, but a lot remains to be discovered.
All right, a very finicky feed. We apologize for that, folks here, watching here on Live Impact News. So we'll go back to the recap really quickly here. There is a gentleman being sought out of Clearwater, Florida, reportedly shot into a police substation on Clearwater Beach, shooting into an unoccupied police cruiser. We saw images briefly there. They have a poster card that's over there at that press briefing where they showed, looked like a bullet hole or an indentation in a vehicle that might have been from that shooting. And they are looking for a man. As we mentioned, he's in his 20s. He's facing multiple charges related to this incident. They put out a tip number for folks to call. That's 727-562-4242, 727-562-4242. 4242. Okay, we've got the feedback. Bear with us, folks. It looks pretty good to me. We're going to take it now.
Is there a mental health component here that you're looking into as well?
We have to look at all those. That's always a possibility.
You said targeted, purposeful, and accurate. Is that based on what he said at the time, or how do you get to those definitions?
Oh, easily. He shot up a police station that's clearly marked as a police station, and his round was pretty accurate because it went in the driver's side window of one of my police cars.
What exactly did he say on the call that made you want to alert law enforcement?
It wasn't on the call. It was some evidence and information we obtained at the scene. I can't go into it any further, but it was enough for us out of an abundance of caution to call TPD.
And just to be clear, did he exit his car to do the shooting and then took off in his car, or did he do it from his car?
We believe he did it from his car and left in the car until he called us several minutes later, a couple blocks away.
Did you receive his gun?
Pardon?
Are you able to, do you have his gun in custody?
Yeah, we have the weapon, and he surrendered peacefully, and there was no issue with the arrest. So is this attention-seeking behavior? We have no idea at this point.
There's a camera right on the front of the building there. Can you just talk about if the camera caught any of his actions that happened last night?
So we're reviewing any kind of video feeds we may have. We've engaged our real-time crime center. They're reviewing all that to see if we have any good depiction of the shooting itself.
But nothing from the police department's camera right on the front of the building?
No, not that I'm aware of.
What kind of gun was it? Was it a shotgun, a handgun?
A handgun. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, a rather short police briefing there from Clearwater, Florida. You briefly saw the image of the man in custody. That tip line that I mentioned, that's actually for folks to call since the person is in custody and give tips on the motive, because we kind of heard there from the police department that the person, once they got him into custody, essentially stopped talking to them. So he didn't share any more about why he allegedly did this. So they're really trying to learn more about that. As we get more details, of course, we'll pass them along. Meantime, we'll send you back to weather impacts. I know we had to dip into Becca's forecast right in the middle, so we wanted to make sure you got the full look. So let's listen in.
Good Monday afternoon. We are gearing up for a hot and humid day that's going to be feeling like the middle to upper 90s across much of the area. Will likely only continue to feel hotter as we head towards midweek. There is also going to be a chance for some thunderstorms, not going to be widespread, more of that hit or miss activity that we've been seeing over the past several days. We'll continue that into today. On par with that, there is an active flood watch for a couple of our counties that we'll get to in a moment. Highs today will reach the upper 80s to lower 90s across much of the metro area and middle 70s for the high country. But in the metro, when you factor in the heat and humidity, it's likely going to be feeling close to around 96, 97 for today. So that's what you're going to want to prepare for as you step outdoors today. What you can expect pretty much today going forward is scattered afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Again, not widespread, but any downpour that does develop, and especially those slow moving ones, could dump a lot of rain, and isolated flash flooding will be possible with heat index values well above 90 degrees. Now let's talk about the heat first, as the high temperatures for today will only be a couple of degrees above that normal high for this time of year, and that's going to be combined with dew points in the lower 70s, meaning even though our actual high temperatures will be in the upper 80s, peak heat index value will reach 97 for today, 99 tomorrow, and then start to reach the triple digits by both Wednesday and Thursday, and still remain hot towards the end of the work week. June is also the month where we have the strongest sun angle. It actually peaks the summer solstice, which comes on Friday, and right on par with that, our UV index is at a 10. That is a very high, and a burn time of about 15 minutes. So it's important not only to hydrate today, but sunscreen and hats, sunglasses will all be needed for much of this week ahead. Why we're so hot is that Bermuda high pressure system that I've been talking about pretty much all weekend long, driving in all of that tropical air across the southeast, bringing hazy, hot, and humid conditions all across the Carolinas. We're already starting to see a couple of downpours develop in and around that area, and we'll continue to see that later on this afternoon. During the early evening hours, you can see some of these could pack a punch with those slow moving downpours, and of course frequent lightning also going to be a concern with this system. We are under a low to medium excessive rainfall risk. This is mainly going to be for the locations that really saw more of that significant rainfall from the past 48 hours. But again, any slow moving downpour, just because of how saturated the soils are, we'll have a chance for some localized flooding. And in accordance with that, a couple of counties have been added to a flood watch until about midnight tonight for some of our mountain communities as well as our most eastern counties. You'll notice the metro has been left out of this, not necessarily because there's not going to be any flooding, but any flooding that does occur will be localized. It's been a wet month so far. In fact, we've picked up over 3 inches of rain, and we're only halfway through the month of June. That is a departure from normal, above an inch, and it's done wonders for that drought monitor. It's basically eliminated the drought that we had, especially in the spring. The month of May brought above average rainfall for us as well. So from the mountains into the metro, pretty much across the entire state of North and South Carolina, don't have to worry about a drought. Summer officially begins this Friday at 10:41 p.m. We have a forecasted high of about 90 degrees, but you will not have to wait that long for it to feel like summer. Here is this 7-day forecast. For today, high temperatures, upper 80s, feeling more like the middle to upper 90s. Tonight into early tomorrow morning, those lows will bottom down into the lower 70s. Then we'll do it all again, but it's only going to be hotter. Highs will make it into the lower 90s, and this will likely be the start of our heat wave. A heat wave is 3 consecutive days with at least 90-degree or above temperatures. That's exactly what we have in the forecast.
There you have it, folks. We want to turn now to a breaking update just into the Live Impact News studio. Just moments ago, we have learned a Minnesota judge has set bail for the man accused in the fatal shooting of a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband and the wounding of another lawmaker and his wife from over the weekend. You might recall this big national headline for the past couple of days. The state's biggest manhunt, ending with the capture of Vance Belter, who we just mentioned, had an appearance in court. Minnesota judge ordering his bail to be set at $5 million, facing multiple charges here: second-degree intentional murder, attempted murder, and also some stalking and firearms charges. So we will keep you updated on that front. Meantime, we wanted to make sure that you're caught up to the very latest from authorities on this case. So let's listen in here as authorities in Minnesota gave us this briefing on Belter's case.
I want to start by expressing our deepest condolences to all who loved Melissa and Mark Hortman. They were parents, neighbors. Their loss is felt deeply by the people who knew and loved them. This act of political violence is deeply felt across our state and across the country. We also want to again express our thoughts and support to State Senator John Hoffman, his wife Yvette, and their daughter. Our office will be here to support you and your family as we pursue justice and to help with whatever support you need. I want to thank the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the Brooklyn Park Police Department, and the hundreds of local, state, and federal law enforcement officers who worked tirelessly to apprehend Vance Belter. People were understandably terrified over the last several days, and the state owes you a debt of gratitude for all of your swift work. I want to specifically thank the Brooklyn Park police officer whose proactive intervention in checking on the Hortmans likely stopped further bloodshed. I also want to thank the members of our office who worked all weekend with our law enforcement partners in this case. And I want to thank the medical team who provided emergency care to the Hoffmans. Although police have made an arrest, the investigation is ongoing, and so I'm limited in what I can share about it. On Saturday, our office filed charges against Mr. Bolton for second-degree murder and attempted murder, allowing us to obtain a nationwide arrest warrant, which would allow law enforcement across the country to arrest him. These are the highest charges we can file by complaint, and it needed to be done quickly to get the warrant out. Mr. Bolter was taken into state custody, and our office intends to pursue first-degree murder charges against Mr. Bolter. We are at early stages. We will be reviewing all of the evidence from law enforcement as it comes in and working with our law enforcement partners to develop the case. I do want people to know that given the scale of this investigation, the review of evidence will take time. I want to assure our community and all those who are grieving that we will seek justice and accountability for the victims of all these heinous crimes. Our most senior and experienced prosecutors are handling this case. Because this case is now an active prosecution, that is all I will say about the case itself. It is a frightening time we are living in. Political violence is prevalent, and the way we talk to and about each other has raised the temperature to unfathomable levels. We cannot continue on this way. In times of tragedy, but also every day, as we navigate our daily lives, we need to find ways to support one another. As our community grieves, I encourage those out there seeking to create additional chaos to stop spreading misinformation and conspiracy theories. Our law enforcement partners are building a case using facts and evidence to ensure Vance Bolter is held accountable. Again, I want to thank everyone who helped bring this search to a resolution, and again to express our grief, condolences, and support to the Hortman and Hoffman families.
Good morning. I'm Dewana Wood, Sheriff of Hennepin County. I want to begin by expressing my deepest condolences to all those impacted by the unspeakable tragedy, especially to the families. I stand here with immense gratitude to the law enforcement agencies who responded with speed, strength, and commitment to justice and public safety. Thank you to the Brooklyn Park Police Department and the Champlin Police Department. Hennepin County is proud to have your team serve in our community as we grieve with you. Thank you to all the local, state, and federal agencies. Hundreds of first responders came together to bring justice to an unthinkable act of violence. Our mission was clear: protect the public, prevent further harm, and hold the perpetrator accountable. We all shared a singular goal: justice rooted in public safety. Vance Bolter inflicted unimaginable harm to our community Saturday morning, and he did it while impersonating the very people who are trusted to protect and serve. These violent acts strike at the heart of our democracy and the safety of those who serve the public with dedication and courage. Our hearts go out to Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark, their families, and their loved ones. We are also grateful Senator Hoffman and his wife Yvette are expected to recover, and we will be here to support them during their long journey of healing and grief. Today, the manhunt is over, but the investigation continues, and more importantly, the process to healing begins. We also need to mention that we know that this unspeakable act has left residual effects on many people in our communities, as we're still taking calls from people and organizations asking for additional resources. We grieve with those close to our victims, our families, and all community members. The last days have revealed the true strength of our unity both as a community and as law enforcement bound by a shared mission to protect and serve. We stand together today to uphold the principles of our democracy and with the continued commitment to safety and security of those we vow to protect and serve. Thank you.
We also have Drew Evans from the BCA, Chief Mark Bruley from Brooklyn Park will stand for questions.
Superintendent, I'm just curious, we were with you last night. In hindsight overnight, did the defendant give us any indication, any comments, anything you can share publicly about his mode of cooperation with authorities?
Yeah.
He made a decision to not take his own life at the moment, so I'm curious.
Yeah, so the question was related to whether or not there's cooperation. The individual, we can't provide a lot because it's now under the prosecutorial process in terms of what cooperation was. What I will tell you is that since he's been in custody, that starts the process, as the county attorney mentioned and the sheriff mentioned, of the ongoing investigation. And so what that does, there's a number of steps that went with that, regardless of the level of cooperation of the individual. Now that we have him in custody, it opens up additional investigative avenues that we'll be all working together collectively with to gather the information and evidence in this case.
Can you give us any additional details on how the final moments unfolded, how you tracked him, and You mentioned last night him crawling. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So it was mentioned the final moments of when he was taken into custody. You know, as we mentioned yesterday, we had a extremely large law enforcement presence with dozens of investigative agencies and law enforcement and SWAT teams in the area because we believed he was in that area. We received information to begin with, the vehicle that was recovered that first led us to the Sibley County area, and that's what's concentrated our search in that area. We then received additional information that provided confirmation closer to the time of the actual arrest that he was in fact in that area, which is which time the command post started moving all of the law enforcement assets into that area, and they were able to close in. And when we say he was crawling towards us, these were in response to the commands by the SWAT teams that were on scene as they were working in coordination with each other, along with our State Patrol air assets as they looked were able to get over him and then came into custody. He was cooperative and cooperated with law enforcement and gave up peacefully at that time.
Will his wife be charged? And is there any
Sorry,
indication she was helping him?
As we said, the real work of the investigation now begins. They've been working collectively, and I want to thank the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and Mike Rammer, who's with us today, who worked really with our team all weekend long, along with others across their office and the United States Attorney's Office, to be working together on that. What I will say when it comes to his wife and anybody else, if anybody else participated in these crimes, if anybody else worked to hide him and provide assistance in getting away, that will certainly be something that we are looking at with that, and we will provide that information to our prosecutors that will analyze and determine whether or not additional charges are appropriate.
Can you tell us how long you negotiated with him until he surrendered?
Yeah, so it was, I don't have the specifics. The question is, how long do we negotiate with him? It was a relatively short period of time because they were moving in and he was cooperative. So it wasn't a prolonged negotiation with him. It was more that they converged on him. And because of the extremely good coordination and what they're doing, I believe he's certainly in a position where he just had to give up because he knew he was surrounded by who was there.
And Mary, I have a question. I know we're going to hear shortly from federal prosecutors.
Yeah, so if I could just say, I think, as Drew said, we've shifted into prosecution right now. And so I understand why it was important to get information out there to the public, because there was a person who was suspected of these murders. Right now, what we're trying to, everybody up here is trying to do, is to protect the integrity of the investigation. And so I know there's a tension. I know people want information, and right now we're really trying to focus on the investigation so that we don't have all kinds of information out there, so that as law enforcement gathers that information, if we need to present it in court, there's integrity there. So I know you all have questions, but that's the reason we're really focusing on not sharing some information. Yes, Paul?
And I have a legal question.
Of course.
We're going to hear shortly from
Yes.
federal prosecutors. I heard
Yes.
some attorneys pontificating on the morning news